Beowulf, an Anglo-Saxon epic poem by the Beowulf poet, translated from the Anglo-Saxon text by John Lesslie Hall, Ph.D., Johns Hopkins University, Professor of English and History in the College of William and Mary. To my wife. Preface. The present work is a modest effort to reproduce approximately, in modern measures, the venerable epic Beowulf. Approximately, I repeat, for a very close reproduction of Anglo-Saxon verse would, to a large extent, be prose to a modern ear. The Anglo-Saxon text and glossary have been closely followed. Occasionally a deviation has been made, but always for what seemed good and sufficient reason. The translator does not aim to be an editor. Once in a while, however, he has added a conjecture of his own to the emendations quoted from the criticisms of other students of the poem. The work is addressed to two classes of readers. From both of these alike, the translator begs sympathy and cooperation. The Anglo-Saxon scholar he hopes to please by adhering faithfully to the original. The student of English literature he aims to interest by giving him, in modern garb, the most ancient epic of our race. This is a bold and venturesome undertaking, and yet there must be some students of the Teutonic past willing to follow even a daring guide if they may read in modern phrases of the sorrows of Hrothgar, of the prowess of Beowulf, and of the feelings that stirred the hearts of our forefathers in their primeval homes. In order to please the larger class of readers, a regular cadence has been used, a measure which, while retaining the essential characteristics of the original, permits the reader to see ahead of him in reading. Perhaps every Anglo-Saxon scholar has his own theory as to how Beowulf should be translated. Some have given us prose versions of what we believe to be a great poem. Is it any reflection on our honoured Kemble and Arnold to say that their translations fail to show a layman that Beowulf is justly called our first epic? Of those translators who have used verse, several have written from what would seem a mistaken point of view. Is it proper, for instance, that the grave and solemn speeches of Beowulf and Hrothgar be put in ballad measures, tripping lightly and airily along? Or again, is it fitting that the rough martial music of Anglo-Saxon verse be interpreted to us in the smooth measures of modern blank verse? Do we hear what has been beautifully called the clanging tread of a warrior in mail? Of all English translations of Beowulf, that of Professor Garnett alone gives any adequate idea of the chief characteristics of this great Teutonic epic. The measure used in the present translation is believed to be as near a reproduction of the original as modern English affords. The cadences closely resemble those used by Browning in some of his most striking poems. The four stresses of the Anglo-Saxon verse are retained, and as much thesis and anacrusis is allowed as is consistent with the regular cadence. Alliteration has been used to a large extent, but it was thought that modern ears would hardly tolerate it on every line. End rhyme has been used occasionally, internal rhyme sporadically. Both have some warrant in Anglo-Saxon poetry. For end rhyme, see 153, 154, for internal rhyme, 221, 640. What Gamere calls the rhyme giver has been studiously kept, viz. The first accented syllable in the second half verse always carries the alliteration, and the last accented syllable alliterates only sporadically. Alternate alliteration is occasionally used, as in the original, see 76185. No two accented syllables have been brought together, except occasionally after a caesural pause, see 219 and 12.1. Or, scientifically speaking, Seever's C-type has been avoided as not consonant with the plan of translation. Several of his types, however, constantly occur. See text for more details. Anacrusis gives further variety to the types used in the translation. The parallelisms of the original have been faithfully preserved, e.g. 116 and 117. Lord and Wielder of Glory, 130, 131, 132, 212 and 213, 227 and 238, 35 and 36. Occasionally some loss has been sustained, but on the other hand, a gain has here and there been made. The effort has been made to give a decided flavour of archaism to the translation. All words not in keeping with the spirit of the poem have been avoided. Again, though many archaic words have been used, there are none it is believed, which are not found in standard modern poetry. With these preliminary remarks, it will not be amiss to give an outline of the story of the poem. The story. Hrothgar, king of the Danes, or Shieldings, builds a great mead hall or palace, in which he hopes to feast his liegemen and to give them presents. The joy of king and retainers is, however, of short duration. Grendel, the monster, is seized with hateful jealousy. He cannot brook the sounds of joyance that reach him down in his fen dwelling near the hall. Oft and anon he goes to the joyous building, bent on direful mischief. Thane after thane is ruthlessly carried off and devoured, while no one is found strong enough and bold enough to cope with the monster. For 12 years he persecutes Hrothgar and his vassals. Oversea a day's voyage off, Beowulf of the Geats, nephew of Hygelac, king of the Geats, hears of Grendel's doings and of Hrothgar's misery. He resolves to crush the fell monster and relieve the aged king with 14 chosen companions. He sets sail for Daneland. Reaching that country, he soon persuades Hrothgar of his ability to help him. The hours that elapse before night are spent in beer drinking and conversation. When Hrothgar's bedtime comes, he leaves the hall in charge of Beowulf, telling him that never before has he given to another the absolute wardship of his palace. All retire to rest, Beowulf, as it were, sleeping upon his arms. Grendel comes, the great march-stepper, bearing God's anger. He seizes and kills one of the sleeping warriors. Then he advances towards Beowulf. A fierce and desperate hand-to-hand struggle ensues. No arms are used, both combatants trusting to strength and hand grip. Beowulf tears Grendel's shoulder from its socket, and the monster retreats to his den, howling and yelling with agony and fury. The wound is fatal. The next morning, at early dawn, warriors in numbers flock to the hall Heorot to hear the news. Joy is boundless, glee runs high. Hrothgar and his retainers are lavish of gratitude and of gifts. Grendel's mother, however, comes the next night to avenge his death. She is furious and raging. While Beowulf is sleeping in a room somewhat apart from the quarters of the other warriors, she seizes one of Hrothgar's favourite counsellors and carries him off and devours him. Beowulf is called. Determined to leave Heorot entirely purified, he arms himself and goes down to look for the female monster. After travelling through the waters many hours, he meets her near the sea bottom. She drags him to her den. There he sees Grendel lying dead. After a desperate and almost fatal struggle with the woman, he slays her and swims upward in triumph, taking with him Grendel's head. Joy is renewed at Heorot. Congratulations crowd upon the victor. Hrothgar literally pours treasures into the lap of Beowulf, and it is agreed among the vassals of the king that Beowulf will be their next liege lord. Beowulf leaves Daneland. Hrothgar weeps and laments at his departure. When the hero arrives in his own land, Hygelac treats him as a distinguished guest. He is the hero of the hour. Beowulf subsequently becomes king of his own people, the Geats. After he has been ruling for 50 years, his own neighbourhood is woefully harried by a fire-spewing dragon. Beowulf determines to kill him. In the ensuing struggle, both Beowulf and the dragon are slain. The grief of the Geats is inexpressible. They determine, however, to leave nothing undone to honour the memory of their lord. A great funeral pyre is built and his body is burnt. Then a memorial barrow is made, visible from a great distance, that sailors afar may be constantly reminded of the prowess of the national hero of Geatland. The poem closes with a glowing tribute to his bravery, his gentleness, his goodness of heart, and his generosity. It is the devout desire of this translator to hasten the day when the story of Beowulf shall be as familiar to English-speaking peoples as that of the Iliad. Beowulf is our first great epic. It is an epitomized history of the life of the Teutonic races. It brings vividly before us our forefathers of pre-Alfredian eras in their love of war, of sea, and of adventure. My special thanks are due to Professors Francis A. March and James A. Harrison for advice, sympathy, and assistance. J. L. Hall. Abbreviations used in the notes. See text for details. Beowulf. Chapter 1. The Life and Death of Shield. The famous race of Spear Danes. Lo, the Spear Danes glory through splendid achievements. The folk kings' former fame we have heard of, how princes displayed then their prowess in battle. Shield, their mighty king, in honour of whom they are often called Shieldings, he is the great-grandfather of Hrothgar, so prominent in the poem. Oft Shield, the Skeffing, from scathers in numbers. From many a people their mead benches tore, since first he found him friendless and wretched. The earth had had terror. Comfort he got for it, waxed neath the welking world honour gained, till all his neighbours o'er the sea were compelled to bow to his bidding and bring him their tribute. An excellent atheling after was born him. A son is born to him who receives the name of Beowulf, a name afterwards made so famous by the hero of the poem. A son and heir young in his dwelling, whom Godfather sent to solace the people. He had marked the misery malice had caused them, that reaved of their rulers they wretched had erstwhile long been afflicted. The Lord, in requital, wielder of glory, with world honour blessed him. Famed was Beowulf, far spread the glory of Shield's great son in the lands of the Danemen. The ideal Teutonic king lavishes gifts on his vassals. So the carle that is young, by kindnesses rendered, the friends of his father with fees in abundance, must be able to earn that when age approacheth. Eager companions aid him requitingly. When the war assaults him, serve him as liegemen. By praiseworthy actions must honour be got. Among all the races, at the hour that was fated, Shield dies at the hour appointed by fate. Shield then departed to the All-Father's keeping, warlike to wend him. Away then they bear him to the flood of the current, his fond loving comrades, as himself he had bidden, while the friend of the Shieldings word sway wielded, and the well-loved land prince long did rule them. The ring-stemmed vessel, bark of the atheling, lay there at anchor, icy in glimmer and eager for sailing. By his own request, his body is laid on a vessel and wafted seaward. The beloved leader laid they down there, giver of rings on the breast of the vessel, the famed by the mainmast, a many of jewels, of fretted embossings, from far lands brought over, was placed near at hand then. And heard I not ever that a folk ever furnished a float more superbly, with weapons of warfare, weeds for the battle, beads and burnies on his bosom sparkled, many a jewel that with him must travel, on the flush of the flood afar on the current, and favours no fewer, they furnished him soothly excellent folk gems than others had given him. He leaves Daneland on the breast of a bark, who when first he was born outward did send him lone on the main, the merest of infants, and the gold-fashioned standard they stretched under heaven, high o'er his head let the holm currents bear him. Seaward consigned him, sad was their spirit, their mood very mournful. Men are not able, no one knows whither the boat drifted, soothly to tell us, they in halls who reside, heroes under heaven, to what haven he hied. Chapter 2. Shield's successors, Hrothgar's great mead hall. Beowulf succeeds his father Shield. In the boroughs then, Beowulf, bairn of the Shieldings, beloved land prince for long-lasting season, was famed mid the folk. His father departed, the prince from his dwelling, till afterward sprang great-minded Halfdanu, the Danes in his lifetime. He graciously governed, grim-mooded, aged, Helfdene's birth. 4 bairns of his body, born in succession, woke in the world, war troopers' leader, Herugar, Hrothgar, and Helga the Good. Heard I that Ilan was Ongentheow's consort. He has 3 sons, one of them Hrothgar, and a daughter named Elan. Hrothgar becomes a mighty king. The well-beloved bedmate of the war Shilfing leader. Then glory in battle to Hrothgar was given, waxing of war fame, that willingly kinsmen obeyed his bidding, till the boys grew to manhood, a numerous band. It burned in his spirit to urge his folk to found a great building, a mead hall grander than men of the era, he is eager to build a great hall in which he may feast his retainers. Ever had heard of, and in it to share with young and old of the blessings the Lord had allowed him, save life and retainers, then the work I find afar was assigned to many races in Middle Earth's regions, to adorn the great folk hall. In due time it happened, early among men, that 'twas finished entirely. The greatest of hall buildings, Heorot he named it. The hall is completed, and is called Heort or Heorot, who wide-reaching word sway wielded 'mong earlmen. His promise he brake not, rings he lavished, treasure at banquet towered the hall up, high and horn-crested, huge between antlers. It battle waves bided, the blasting fire demon. Ere long then from hottest hatred must sword wrath arise for a woman's husband and father. Then the mighty war spirit endured for a season. The monster Grendel is madly envious of the Daneman's joy, bore it bitterly, he who bided in darkness. That light-hearted laughter loud in the building greeted him daily. There was dulcet harp music, clear song of the singer. He said that he was able. The course of the story is interrupted by a short reference to some old account of the creation. To tell from old earthmen's beginnings that Father Almighty earth had created, the winsome world that the water encircleth, set exultingly the sun's and moon's beams, to lavish their lustre on land folk and races, and earth he embellished in all her regions with limbs and leaves. Life he bestowed too on all the kindreds that live under heaven. The glee of the warriors is overcast by a horrible dread. So blessed with abundance, brimming with joyance, the warriors abided till a certain one gan to dog them with deeds of direfullest malice. A foe in the hall building, this horrible stranger was Grendel, entitled the March Stepper famous, who dwelt in the moor fens, the marsh and the fastness, the one mooded being abode for a season in the land of the giants, when the Lord and Creator had banned him and branded for that bitter murder, the killing of Abel, all-ruling father. Cain is referred to as a progenitor of Grendel, and of monsters in general. The kindred of Cain, crushed with his vengeance in the feud, he rejoiced not, but far away drove him from kindred and kind, that crime to atone for, meter of justice. Thence ill-favoured creatures, elves and giants, monsters of ocean, came into being, and the giants that long time grappled with God, he gave them requital. Chapter 3. Grendel the Murderer. Grendel attacks the sleeping heroes. When the sun was sunken, he set out to visit the lofty hall building, how the ring Danes had used it for beds and benches when the banquet was over. Then he found there, reposing, many a noble asleep after supper. Sorrow the heroes misery knew not. The monster of evil, greedy and cruel, tarried but little. He drags off 30 of them and devours them. Fell and frantic, and forced from their slumbers, 30 of Thane men. Thence he departed, leaping and laughing his lair to return to, with surfeit of slaughter, sallying homeward. In the dusk of the dawning, as the day was just breaking, was Grendel's prowess revealed to the warriors. A cry of agony goes up when Grendel's horrible deed is fully realized. Then his meal-taking finished, a moan was uplifted, mourning cry mighty. The man-ruler, famous, the long-worthy atheling, sat very woeful, suffered great sorrow, sighed for his liegemen. When they had seen the track of the hateful pursuer, the spirit accursed, too crushing that sorrow. The monster returns the next night, too loathsome and lasting. Not longer he tarried, but one night, after continued his slaughter, shameless and shocking, shrinking but little from malice and murder, they mastered him fully. He was easy to find then, who otherwhere looked for a pleasanter place of repose in the lodges, a bed in the bowers. Then was brought to his notice, told him truly by token apparent, the whole Thane's hatred. He held himself after further and faster, who the foeman did baffle. So ruled he, and strongly strove against justice lone, against all men, till empty uptowered King Hrothgar's agony and suspense last 12 years. The choicest of houses, Long was the season, 12 winters' time, torture suffered, the friend of the Shieldings, every affliction, endless agony. Hence it after became certainly known to the children of men, sadly in measures, that long against Hrothgar Grendel struggled. His grudges he cherished, murderous malice, many a winter, strife unremitting, and peacefully wished he life woe to lift from no liegeman at all of the men of the Dane folk. For money to settle, no counsellor needed count for a moment on handsome amends at the hands of the murderer. Grendel is unremitting in his persecutions. The monster of evil fiercely did harass the ill-planning death shade, both elder and younger, trapping and tricking them. He trod every night then the mist-covered moor fens. Men do not know where witches and wizards wander and ramble. So the foe of mankind, many of evils, grievous injuries, often accomplished, horrible hermit, he frequented, gem-bedecked palace when the night-shades had fallen. God is against the monster. Since God did oppose him, not the throne could he touch. The light-flashing jewel, love of him knew not. 'Twas a fearful affliction to the friend of the Shieldings. The king and his council deliberate in vain. Soul-crushing sorrow. Not seldom in private sat the king and his council. Conference held they, what the braves should determine against terrors unlooked for. They invoked the aid of their gods. At the shrines of their idols, often they promised gifts and offerings. Earnestly prayed they, the devil from hell would help them to lighten their people's oppression. Such practice they used then, hope of the heathen. Hell they remembered in innermost spirit. God they knew not. The true God they do not know. Judge of their actions, all-wielding ruler. No praise could they give the guardian of heaven, the wielder of glory. Woe will be his who, through furious hatred, his spirit shall drive to the clutch of the fire. No comfort shall look for, wax no wiser. Well for the man who, living his life days, his Lord may face, and find defence in his Father's embrace. Chapter 4. Beowulf goes to Hrothgar's assistance. Hrothgar sees no way of escape from the persecutions of Grendel. So Halfdenu's kinsman constantly mused on his long-lasting sorrow. The battle-thane clever was not anywise able evils to escape from, too crushing the sorrow that came to the people, loathsome and lasting the life-grinding torture. Beowulf, the Geat, hero of the poem, hears of Hrothgar's sorrow, and resolves to go to his assistance. Greatest of night woes, so Hygelac's liegeman, good amid Geatman of Grendel's achievements, heard in his home. Of heroes then living, he was stoutest and strongest, sturdy and noble. He bade them prepare him a bark that was trusty. He said he the war-king would seek o'er the ocean, the folk-leader noble, since he needed retainers. For the perilous project prudent companions chided him little. Though loving him dearly, they egged the brave atheling, augured him glory. With 14 carefully chosen companions, he sets out for Daneland. The excellent knight from the folk of the Geatman had liegemen selected, likest to prove them trustworthy warriors, with 14 companions, the vessel he looked for. A liegeman then showed him, a sea-crafty man, the bounds of the country. Fast the days fleeted. The float was a water, the craft by the cliff. Clomb to the prow, then well-equipped warriors, the wave currents twisted the sea on the sand. Soldiers then carried on the breast of the vessel bright shining jewels. Handsome war armour, heroes outshoved then, war men, the woodship, on its wished-for adventure. The vessel sails like a bird. The foamy-necked floater, fanned by the breeze, likest a bird, glided the waters. In 24 hours they reached the shores of Hrothgar's dominions. Till 24 hours thereafter, the twist-stemmed vessel had travelled such distance that the sailing men saw the sloping embankments, the sea-cliffs gleaming, precipitous mountains, nesses enormous. They were nearing the limits at the end of the ocean. Up thence quickly the men of the Vedars clomb to the mainland, fastened their vessel, battle-weeds rattled, war-burnies clattered, the wielder they thanked, that the ways o'er the waters had waxen so gentle. They are held by the Danish coastguard. Then, well from the cliff edge, the guard of the Shieldings, who the sea cliffs should see to, saw o'er the gangway brave ones bearing beauteous targets, armour all ready. Anxiously thought he, musing and wondering what men were approaching. High on his horse then, Hrothgar's retainer turned him to coastward, mightily brandished. His lance in his hands, questioned with boldness. His challenge? Who are ye men here, mail-covered warriors, clad in your corselets, come thus a-driving, a high-riding ship o'er the shoals of the waters, and hither 'neath helmets have hied o'er the ocean? I have been strand guard, standing as warden, lest enemies over anywise ravage Danish dominions with army of warships. More boldly, never have warriors ventured hither to come, of kinsmen's approval, word leave of warriors. I ween that ye surely— He is struck by Beowulf's appearance. Nothing have known, never a greater one of earls o'er the earth have I had a sight of, than is one of your number, a hero in armour, no low-ranking fellow, adorned with his weapons, but launching them little, unless looks are deceiving, and striking appearance, ere ye pass on your journey, as treacherous spies to the land of the Shieldings. And, father fair, I fully must know now what race ye belong to, ye far-away dwellers, seafaring sailors. My simple opinion, hear ye and hearken, haste is most fitting, plainly to tell me what place ye are come from. Chapter 5. The Geats reach Heorot. Beowulf courteously replies. The chief of the strangers rendered him answer, war troopers' leader and word treasure opened. We are Geats. We are sprung from the lineage of the people of Geatland, and Hygelac's hearth friends to heroes unnumbered. My father, Ecgtheow, was well known in his day. My father was known, a noble head warrior, Ecgtheow titled. Many a winter he lived with the people ere he passed on his journey. Old from his dwelling, each of the counsellors, widely mid-world folk, well remembers him. Our intentions towards King Hrothgar are of the kindest. We, kindly of spirit, the lord of thy people, the son of King Halfdenu, have come here to visit. Folk troops defender, be free in thy counsels. To the noble one bear we a weighty commission. The helm of the Danemen we shall hide, I ween. Is it true that a monster is slaying Danish heroes? Naught of our message thou knowest, if it happen, as we soothly heard say, that some savage despoiler, some hidden pursuer, on nights that are murky, by deeds very direful, mid the Danemen exhibits, hatred unheard of, horrid destruction, and the falling of dead from feelings least selfish. I can help your king to free himself from this horrible creature. I am able to render counsel to Hrothgar, how he, wise and worthy, may worst the destroyer, if the anguish of sorrow should ever be lessened. Comfort come to him, and care waves grow cooler, or ever hereafter he agony suffer, and troublous distress while towereth upward, the handsomest of houses high on the summit. The coastguard reminds Beowulf that it is easier to say than to do. Bestriding his stallion, the strand watchman answered the doughty retainer. The difference, surely, twixt words and works, the warlike shield-bearer, who judgeth wisely, well shall determine. This band, I hear, beareth no malice. I am satisfied of your good intentions, and shall lead you to the palace. To the prince of the Shieldings, pass ye then onward with weapons and armour. I shall lead you in person. To my war-trusty vassals' command, I shall issue to keep from all injury your excellent vessel. Your boat shall be well cared for during your stay here. Your fresh-tarred craft gainst every opposer, close by the seashore, till the curved, necked bark shall waft back again the well-beloved hero, o'er the way of the water to Vader dominions. He again compliments Beowulf. To warrior so great, 'twill be granted sure in the storm of strife to stand secure. Onward they fared then. The vessel lay quiet. The broad-bosomed bark was bound by its cable, firmly at anchor. The bore signs glistened, bright on the visors, vivid with gilding, blaze-hardened, brilliant. The bore acted warden. The heroes hastened, hurried the liegemen. The land is perhaps rolling. descended together till they saw the great palace, the well-fashioned wassail hall, wondrous and gleaming. Hierod flashes on their view. Mid-world folk and kindreds that was widest reputed of halls under heaven, which the hero abode in, its lustre enlightened lands without number. Then the battle-brave hero showed them the glittering court of the bold ones, that they easily thither might fare on their journey. The aforementioned warrior, turning his courser, quoth as he left them, the coastguard, having discharged his duty, bids them Godspeed. "'Tis time I were faring. Father Almighty, grant you his grace, and give you to journey safe on your mission. To the sea I will get me, 'gainst hostile warriors as warden to stand." Chapter 6. Beowulf introduces himself at the palace. The highway glistened with many-hued pebble. A bypath led the liegemen together. Firm and hand-locked, the war-byrnie glistened, the ring-sword radiant rang mid the armour. As the party was approaching the palace together, they set their arms and armour against the wall. In warlike equipments, against the wall of the building, their wide-fashioned war-shields they weary did set them. Battle-shields sturdy, benchward they turned then. Their battle-sarks rattled, the gear of the heroes, the lances stood up then, all in a cluster. The arms of the seamen, ashen shafts mounted, with edges of iron, the armour-clad troopers, a Danish hero asks them whence and why they are come, were decked with weapons. Then a proud-mooded hero asked of the champions questions of lineage. "From what borders bear ye your battle-shields plated, gilded and gleaming, your grey-coloured burnies, helmets with visors and heap of war-lances? To Hrothgar, the king, I am servant and liegeman. 'Mong folk from far lands found, I have never—'" He expresses no little admiration for the strangers. "Men so many of me and more courageous. I ween that from valour no wise as outlaws, but from greatness of soul ye sought for King Hrothgar." Beowulf replies. Then the strength-famous earlman answer rendered. The proud-mooded wader-chief replied to his question. "We are Higelac's table companions, and bear an important commission to your prince." Hardy, neath helmet, "Higelac's mates are we. Beowulf hight I, to the bairn of Halfdenu, the famous folk leader. I freely will tell to thy prince my commission, if pleasantly hearing he'll grant we may greet him so gracious to all men." Wulfgar replied then. He was prince of the Wendels. His boldness of spirit was known unto many, his prowess and prudence, the prince of the Shieldings. Wulfgar the Thane says that he will go and ask Hrothgar whether he will see the strangers. "The friend of Daneman, I will ask of thy journey, the giver of rings as thou urgest me do it, the folk chief famous, and inform thee early what answer the good one mindeth to render me." He turned then hurriedly where Hrothgar was sitting, old and hoary, his earlman attending him. The strength famous went till he stood at the shoulder of the lord of the Danemen, of courteous Thanemen. The custom he minded. Wulfgar addressed then his friendly liege lord. "Folk of the great man," he thereupon urges his liege lord to receive the visitors courteously, "o'er the way of the waters are wafted hither, faring from far lands, the foremost in rank, the battle champion's Beowulf title. They make this petition with thee, O my chieftain, to be granted a conference, O gracious King Hrothgar. Friendly answer refuse not to give them." Hrothgar, too, is struck with Beowulf's appearance. "In war trappings weeded, worthy they seem so of earls to be honoured. Sure, the atheling is doughty, who headed the heroes hitherward coming." Chapter 7. Hrothgar and Beowulf. Hrothgar remembers Beowulf as a youth, and also remembers his father. Hrothgar answered, helm of the Shieldings, "I remember this man as the merest of striplings. His father, long dead now, was Ecgtheow titled. Him, Hrethel the Geatman, granted at home his one and only daughter. His battle-brave son is come but now, sought a trustworthy friend. Seafaring sailors asserted it then. Beowulf is reported to have the strength of 30 men. Who valuable gift gems of the Geatman carried as peace-offering thither, that he 30 men's grapple has in his hand the hero in battle. God hath sent him to our rescue. The holy Creator, unsworn, sent him to West Danes' warriors. I ween for to render 'gainst Grendel's grimness gracious assistance, I shall give to the good one gift gems for courage, hasten to bid them hither, to speed them. To see assembled this circle of kinsmen, tell them expressly their welcome in sooth to the men of the Danes. To the door of the building, Wulfgar invites the strangers in. Wulfgar went then, this word message shouted, My victorious liege lord bade me to tell you, the East Danes atheling, that your origin knows he, and o'er wave billows wafted ye welcome ere hither. Valiant of spirit, ye straightway may enter, clad in corselets, cased in your helmets, to see King Hrothgar. Here that your battle boards, wood spears and war shafts await your conferring. The mighty one rose then with many a liegeman, an excellent thane group. Some there did await them, and as bid of the brave one the battle gear guarded, together they hied them, while the hero did guide them. Neath Heorot's roof the high-minded went then, sturdy neath helmet, till he stood in the building. Beowulf spake, his byrnie did glisten, his armour seemed over by the art of the craftsman. Beowulf salutes Hrothgar, and then proceeds to boast of his youthful achievements. Hail thou, Hrothgar! I am Hygelac kinsman, and vassal forsooth, many a wonder I dared as a stripling. The doings of Grendel in far-off fatherland I fully did know of. Seafarers tell us this hall building standeth, excellent edifice, empty and useless. To all the earlmen after even light's glimmer, neath heaven's bright hues hath hidden its glory. This my earls then urged me, the most excellent of them, Carlus, very clever, to come and assist thee, folk leader Hrothgar, fully they knew of his fight with the knickers, the strength of my body, themselves they beheld me. When I come from the contest, when covered with gore, foes I escaped from, where 5 I had bound. The giant race wasted in the waters, destroying the knickers by night, bore numberless sorrows. The waders avenged, woes had they suffered, enemies ravaged. Alone now with Grendel, he intends to fight Grendel unaided. I shall manage the matter with the monster of evil. The giant decided. Thee I would therefore beg of thy bounty, bright Danish chieftain, lord of the Scyldings, this single petition. Not to refuse me, defender of warriors, friend lord of folks, so far have I sought thee, that I may unaided, my earlman assisting me, this brave-mooded war band, purified Heorot. I have heard on inquiry the horrible creature, since the monster uses no weapons, from veriest rashness recks not for weapons. I this do scorn then, so be Hygelac gracious, my liege lord beloved, lenient of spirit, to bear a blade or a broad-fashioned target, a shield to the onset, only with hand grip. I too shall disdain to use any. The foe I must grapple, fight for my life then, foeman with foeman. He fain must rely on the doom of the Lord whom death layeth hold of. Should he crush me, he will eat my companions as he has eaten thy thanes. I ween he will wish, if he win in the struggle, to eat in the war-hall earls of the Geat folk, boldly to swallow them, as of yore he did often the best of the Herathmen. Thou needest not trouble a head watch to give me. He will have me dripping. In case of my defeat, thou wilt not have the trouble of burying me. And dreary with gore, if death overtake me, will bear me off bleeding, biting and mouthing me. The hermit will eat me, heedless of pity, marking the more fens. No more wilt thou need then. Should I fail, send my armour to my lord, King Hygelac. Find me my food. If I fall in the battle, send to Hygelac the armour that serveth to shield my bosom, the best of equipments, richest of ring mails. 'Tis the relic of Herathla. Weird is supreme. The work of Wayland goes weird as she must go. Chapter 8. Hrothgar and Beowulf continued. Hrothgar responds. Hrothgar discoursed, helm of the Scyldings, to defend our folk, and to furnish assistance, thou soughtest us hither, good friend Beowulf. Reminiscences of Beowulf's father, Ecgtheow, the fiercest of feuds thy father engaged in. Hiathalaf killed he in hand-to-hand conflict. Mid Wilfingish warriors, then the Waderish people, for fear of a feud were forced to disown him. Thence, flying, he fled to the folk of the South Danes, the race of the Scyldings, o'er the roll of the waters. I had lately begun then to govern the Danemen, the hoard seat of heroes held in my youth, rich in its jewels, Dead was Herigar, my kinsman, and elder had earth joys forsaken. Half Danu his bairn, he was better than I am. That feud thereafter for a fee I compounded. O'er the weltering waters to the Wilfings I sent ornaments old. Oaths did he swear me. Hrothgar recounts to Beowulf the horrors of Grendel's persecutions. It pains me in spirit to any to tell it. What grief in Heorot Grendel hath caused me, what horror unlooked for, by hatred unceasing. Waned is my warband, wasted my whole troop, Weird hath off-cast them to the clutches of Grendel. God can easily hinder the scather from deeds so direful. Oft drunken with beer, my thanes have made many boasts, but have not executed them. O'er the ale-vessel promised warriors in armour, they would willingly wait on the wassailing benches, a grapple with Grendel, with grimmest of edges. Then this mead-hall at morning with murder was reeking. The building was bloody and breaking of daylight. The bench-deals all flooded, dripping and bloodied. The folk-hall was gory. I had fewer retainers, dear beloved warriors, whom death had laid hold of. Sit down to the feast and give us comfort. Sit at the feast now, thy intents unto heroes. Thy victor fame show as thy spirit doth urge thee. A bench is made ready for Beowulf and his party. For the men of Geats then together assembled, in the beer hall of Blithesome, a bench was made ready. There, warlike in spirit, they went to be seated, proud and exultant. A liegeman did service, who a beaker embellished bore with decorum. The gleeman sings. And gleaming drink poured. The gleeman sang whilom. The heroes all rejoiced together. Hearty in Heorot there was heroes rejoicing, a numerous war band of waders and Danemen. Chapter 9. Unferth taunts Beowulf. Unferth, a thane of Hrothgar, is jealous of Beowulf and undertakes to twit him. Unferth spoke up. Ecglaf his son, who sat at the feet of the Lord of the Shieldings, opened the jousting. The journey of Beowulf, seafarer doughty, gave sorrow to Unferth, and greatest chagrin too, for granted he never that any man else on earth should attain to gain under heaven more glory than he. Did you take part in a swimming match with Breca? Art thou that Beowulf with Breca did struggle on the wide sea currents at swimming contended, where to humour your pride the ocean ye tried? 'Twas mere folly that actuated you both to risk your lives on the ocean. From vainest vaunting adventured your bodies in care of the waters, and no one was able, nor lieth nor loth one in the least to dissuade you your difficult voyage. Then ye ventured a-swimming, where your arms outstretching the streams ye did cover, the mere ways measured, mixing and stirring them, glided the ocean. Angry the waves were with the weltering of winter in the water's possession. Ye toiled for a 7 night. He at swimming outdid thee, in strength excelled thee. Then early at morning on the Hyrtharemus shore the holm currents tossed him. Sought he thenceward the home of his fathers, beloved of his liegemen, the land of the Brondings, the peace castle pleasant, where a people he wielded, had borough and jewels. The pledge that he made thee, Breca outdid you entirely. The son of Bianstan hath soothly accomplished. Then I ween thou wilt find thee less fortunate issue. Much more will Grendel outdo you, if you vie with him in prowess. Though ever triumphant in onset of battle, a grim grappling, if Grendel thou darest, for the space of a night nearby to wait for. Beowulf retaliates. Beowulf answered, offspring of Ecgtheow, my good friend Unferth, sure freely and wildly. O friend Unferth, you are fuddled with beer, and cannot talk coherently. Thou fuddled with beer of Breca hast spoken, hast told of his journey. A fact I allege it, that greater strength in the waters I had then, ills in the ocean, than any man else had. We made agreement, as the merest of striplings, promised each other, both of us then were, we simply kept an engagement made in early life, Junkers in years, that we yet would adventure out on the ocean. It all we accomplished. While swimming the sea floods, sword blade unscabbard, boldly we brandished, our bodies expected to shield from the sharks. He sure was unable. He could not excel me, and I would not excel him. To swim on the waters further than I could, more swift on the waves, nor would I from him go. Then we 2 companions stayed in the ocean, After 5 days, the currents separated us. 5 nights together, till the currents did part us. The unweltering waters, weathers the bleakest and nethermost night, and the north wind whistled fierce in our faces, fell with the billows. The mere fish's mood was mightily ruffled, and there, against foemen, my firm knotted corselet, hand-jointed, hardy, helped did afford me. My battle-sark braided, brilliantly gilded. A horrible sea-beast attacked him, but I slew him. Lay on my bosom, to the bottom, then dragged me. A hateful fiend scather seized me and held me, grim in his grapple. 'Twas granted me, nathless, to pierce the monster with the point of my weapon, my obedient blade. Battle off carried the mighty mere creature by means of my hand blow. Chapter 10. Beowulf silences Unferth. Glee is high. So ill-meaning enemies often did cause me sorrow the sorest. I served them, in quittance. My dear sword always served me faithfully. With my dear loved sword, as in sooth it was fitting, they missed the pleasure of feasting abundantly, ill-doers evil, of eating my body, of surrounding the banquet deep in the ocean. But wounded with edges, early at morning they were stretched high on the strand of the ocean. I put a stop to the outrages of the sea monsters. Put to sleep with the sword, that sea-going travellers no longer thereafter were hindered from sailing. The foam-dashing currents came a light from the east, God's beautiful beacon. The billows subsided, that well I could see the nesses projecting. Fortune helps the brave earl, the blustering crags. Weird often saveth the undoomed hero, if doughty his valour. But me did it fortune to fell with my weapon 9 of the knickers. Of night struggle harder, neath dome of the heaven heard I but rarely, nor of wight more woeful in the waves of the ocean. Yet I escaped with my life in the grip of the monsters. After that escape I drifted to Finland, weary from travel. Then the waters bear me to the land of the Finns, the flood with the current. I have never heard of your doing any such bold deeds. The weltering waves, not a word hath been told me of deeds so daring done by thee, Unferth. And of sword terror none. Neither hath Breaker at the play of the battle, nor either of you two, feat so fearless, performed with weapons glinting and gleaming. I utter no boasting. You are a slayer of brothers, and will suffer damnation, wise as you may be. Though with cold-blooded cruelty thou killedst thy brothers, thy nearest of kin, thou needs must in hell get direful damnation. Though doughty thy wisdom, I tell thee in earnest, offspring of Ecglaf. Never had Grendel such numberless horrors, the direful demon, done to thy liege lord. Harrying and Heorot, if thy heart were as sturdy, had your acts been as brave as your words, Grendel had not ravaged your land so long. Thy mood as ferocious as thou dost describe them. He hath found out fully that the fierce burning hatred, the edge battle eager, of all your kindred, of the victory shieldings, need little dismay him. Oaths he exacteth, not any he spares. The monster is not afraid of the Danes, of the folk of the Dane man, but fighteth with pleasure, killeth and feasteth, no contest expecteth. But he will soon learn to dread the Geats, from spear Danish people, but the prowess and valour of the earls of the Geatman early shall venture to give him a grapple. He shall go who is able bravely to banquet. When the bright light of morning on the second day, any warrior may go unmolested to the mead banquet, which the second day bringeth. The sun in its ether robes, o'er children of men shines from the southward. Then the grey-haired, war-famed giver of treasure, Hrothgar's spirits are revived, was blithesome and joyous. The bright Danish ruler expected assistance. The people's protector, the old king trusts Beowulf. The heroes are joyful. Heard from Beowulf his bold resolution. There was laughter of heroes. Loud was the clatter. The words were winsome. Welsh Theo advanced then. Queen Welsh Theo plays the hostess. Consort of Hrothgar, of courtesy mindful, gold-decked, saluted the men in the building, and the free-born woman, the beaker, presented. She offers the cup to her husband first. To the lord of the kingdom, first of the East Danes, bade him be blithesome when beer was a-flowing. Lief to his liegeman, he lustily tasted of banquet and beaker, battle-famed ruler. The Helmingish lady then graciously circled, mid all the liegemen, lesser and greater. She gives presents to the heroes, treasure cups tendered, till time was afforded that the decorous-mooded, dear-deemed folk queen, then she offers the cup to Beowulf, thanking God that aid has come, might bear to Beowulf the bumper o'errunning. She greeted the Geat prince. God she did thank, most wise in her words, that her wish was accomplished, that in any of earlmen she ever should look for solace in sorrow. He accepted the beaker, battle-bold warrior, at Beowulf's giving. Beowulf states to the queen the object of his visit. Then, equipped for combat, quoth he in measures, Beowulf spake, offspring of Ethgau. I purposed in spirit, when I mounted the ocean, I determined to do or die. When I boarded my boat with a band of my liegemen, I would work to the fullest the will of your people, or in foes' clutches, fastened, fall in the battle. Deeds I shall do of daring and prowess, all the last of my life days live in this mead hall. These words to the lady were welcome and pleasing. The boast of the Geat man, with gold trappings broidered, went the free-born folk queen, her fond lord to sit by. Glee is high. Then again, as of yore, was heard in the building courtly discussion, conquerors shouting, heroes were happy, till Halfdanu's son would go to his slumber to seek for refreshing, for the horrid hell-monster in the hall building knew he a fight was determined. Since the light of the sun they no longer could see, and lowering darkness o'er all had descended, and dark under heaven shadowy shapes came shying around them. Hrothgar retires, leaving Beowulf in charge of the hall. The liegemen all rose then. One saluted the other. Hrothgar Beowulf in rhythmical measures, wishing him well, and the wassail hall giving to his care and keeping, quoth he departing, Not to any one else have I ever entrusted but thee and thee only, the hall of the Danemen. Since high I could heave my hand and my buckler. Take thou in charge now the noblest of houses. Be mindful of honour, exhibiting prowess. Watch against the foeman. Thou shalt want no enjoyments. Survive thou safely adventure so glorious. Chapter 11. All sleep, save one. Hrothgar retires. Then Hrothgar departed, his earl throng attending him, folk lord of Shieldings, forth from the building. The war chieftain wished then, Welsh the owl, to look for the queen for a bedmate, to keep away Grendel. God has provided a watch for the hall. The glory of kings had given a hall watch, as men heard recounted, for the king of the Danemen. He did special service, gave the giant a watcher, and the prince of the Geat man implicitly trusted. Beowulf is self-confident. His warlike strength and the Vielder's protection, he prepares for rest. His armour of iron off him he did then, his helmet from his head, to his henchman committed his chase-handled chain-sword, choicest of weapons, and bade him bide with his battle equipments. The good one then uttered words of defiance. Beowulf, Geat man, ere his bed he upmounted. Beowulf boasts of his ability to cope with Grendel. I hold me no meaner in matters of prowess, in warlike achievements, than Grendel does himself. Hence I seek not with sword edge to soothe him to slumber, or life to bereave him, though well I am able. We will fight with nature's weapons only. No battle skill has he, that blows he should strike me, to shatter my shield, though sure he is mighty in strife and destruction. But struggling by night we shall do without edges. Dare he to look for weaponless warfare, and wise-mooded father the glory apportion. God ever holy, God may decide who shall conquer. On which hand soever to him seemeth proper, then the brave-mooded hero bent to his slumber. The pillow received the cheek of the noble, the Geatish warriors lie down, and many a martial mere thane attending sank to his slumber. Seemed it unlikely, they thought it very unlikely, that they should ever see their homes again. That ever thereafter any should hope to be happy at home, hero friends visit or the lordly troop castle where he lived from his childhood. They had heard how slaughter had snatched from the wine-hall, had recently ravished of the race of the Shieldings. But God raised up a deliverer. Too many by far, but the Lord to them granted the weaving of war speed, two waderish heroes, aid and comfort, that every opponent by one man's war might they worsted and vanquished. God rules the world. By the night of himself, the truth is established that God Almighty hath governed for ages, kindreds and nations. A night, very lurid, Grendel comes to Heorot. The traveller at twilight came tramping and striding. The warriors were sleeping who should watch the horned building. Only one warrior is awake. One only excepted. Mid-earthman, 'twas established. The implacable foeman was powerless to hurl them to the land of shadows if the Lord were unwilling. But serving as warder in terror to foemen, he angrily bided the issue of battle. Chapter 12. Grendel and Beowulf. Grendel comes from the fens. Neath the cloudy cliffs came from the moor then Grendel going. God's anger bare he. The monster intended some one of earthmen in the hall building grand to entrap and make way with. He goes towards the joyous building. He went under a welkin. Well he knew of the wine-joyous building, brilliant with plating, gold hall of earthmen. Not the earliest occasion. This was not his first visit there. He the home and manor of Hrothgar had sought. Ne'er found he in life days later nor earlier hardier hero, hall thanes more sturdy. Then came to the building the warrior marching. His horrid fingers tear the door open. Bereft of his joyance, the door quickly opened, on fire hinges fastened. When his fingers had touched it, the fell one had flung then his fury so bitter, opened the entrance early thereafter. The foeman trod the shining hall pavement. He strides furiously into the hall. Strode he angrily. From the eyes of him glimmered a lustre unlovely, likest of fire. He beheld in the hall the heroes in numbers, a circle of kinsmen sleeping together. He exults over his supposed prey. A throng of thane-men. Then his thoughts were exultant. He minded to sunder from each of the thane-men the life from his body, horrible demon. Ere morning came, since fate had allowed him, fate has decreed that he shall devour no more heroes. Beowulf suffers from suspense, the prospect of plenty. Providence willed not to permit him any more of men under heaven to eat in the night time. Hygelac kinsman great sorrow endured, how the dire-mooded creature in unlooked-for assaults were likely to bear him. No thought had the monster of deferring the matter. Grendel immediately seizes a sleeping warrior and devours him. But on earliest occasion he quickly laid hold of a soldier asleep, suddenly tore him, bit his bone prison. The blood drank in currents, swallowed in mouthfuls. He soon had the dead man's feet and hands too, eaten entirely. Nearer he strode then the stout-hearted warrior. Beowulf and Grendel grapple. Snatched as he slumbered, seizing with hand-grip, forward the foeman foined with his hand. Caught he quickly the cunning deviser, on his elbow he rested. This early discovered the master of malice, that in Middle-earth's regions, neath the whole of the heavens, no hand-grapple greater. The monster is amazed at Beowulf's strength. In any man else had he ever encountered. Fearful in spirit, faint-mooded waxed he. Not off could betake him. Death he was pondering. He is anxious to flee. Would fly to his covert, seek the devil's assembly. His calling no more was the same he had followed long in his lifetime. The liege kinsman worthy, Beowulf recalls his boast of the evening, and determines to fulfil it. Of Hygelac minded his speech of the evening, stood he up straight, and stoutly did seize him. His fingers crackled, the giant was outward, the earl stepped farther. The famous one minded to flee away farther, if he found an occasion, and off and away, avoiding delay, to fly to the fen moors. He fully was ware of the strength of his grapple and the grip of the foeman. 'Twas a luckless day for Grendel. 'Twas an ill-taken journey that the injury-bringing, harrying harmer to Heorot wondered. The hall groans. The palace re-echoed to all of the Danemen, dwellers in castles, to each of the bold ones. Earlmen was terror. Angry they both were, arch-warders raging, rattled the building. 'Twas a marvellous wonder that the wine-hall withstood then the bold in battle, bent not to earthward, excellent earth-hall, but within and without it was fastened in so firmly in fetters of iron by the art of the armourer. Off from the sill there bent mead benches many, as men have informed me, adorned with gold work, where the grim ones did struggle. the shielding wise men weened ne'er before that by might and main strength a man under heaven might break it in pieces, bone-decked, resplendent. Crush it by cunning, unless clutch of the fire in smoke should consume it. The sound mounted upwards. Grendel's cries terrify the Danes. Novel enough, on the North Danes fastened the terror of anguish. On all of the men, there who heard from the wall the weeping and plaining, the song of defeat from the foemen of heaven, heard him hymns of horror howl, and his sorrow, hell-bound bewailing. He held him too firmly, who was strongest of main strength of men of that era. Chapter 13. Grendel is vanquished. Beowulf has no idea of letting Grendel live. For no cause whatever would the Earlman's defender leave in life joys the loathsome newcomer. He deemed his existence utterly useless to men under heaven. Many a noble of Beowulf's brandished his battle sword old, would guard the life of his lord and protector, the far famous chieftain, if able to do so. While waging the warfare, this wist, they but little brave battle thanes, while his body intending no weapon would harm Grendel, he bore a charmed life, to slit into slivers, and seeking his spirit, that the relentless bowman, nor finest of weapons of all on the earth, nor any of war-bills was willing to injure, but weapons of victory, swords and such like, he had sworn to dispense with. His death at that time must prove to be wretched, and the far-away spirit widely should journey into enemy's power. This plainly he saw then, who with mirth of mood malice no little had wrought in the past on the race of the earthmen. To God he was hostile, that his body would fail him. But Hygelac hardy henchman and kinsman held him by the hand, hateful to other. Grendel is sorely wounded. Was each one, if living, a body wound suffered, the direful demon, damage incurable. His body bursts. Was seen on his shoulder. His sinews were shivered, his body did burst. To Beowulf was given glory in battle. Grendel from thenceward must flee and hide him in the fen cliffs and marshes. Sick unto death, his dwelling must look for unwinsome and woeful. He wist the more fully. The monster flees away to hide in the moors. The end of his earthly existence was nearing his life days' limits. At last with the daemon, when the slaughter was over, their wish was accomplished. A comer from far land had cleansed then of evil, wise and valiant, the war hall of Hrothgar, saved it from violence. He joyed in the night work, in repute for prowess, the prince of the Geatman. For the East Danish people his boast had accomplished, bettered their burdensome bale sorrows fully. The craft begot evil, they erstwhile had suffered, and were forced to endure from crushing oppression. Their manifold misery, 'twas a manifest token. Beowulf suspends Grendel's hand and arm in Heorot. When the hero in battle the hand suspended, the arm and the shoulder, there was all of the claw of Grendel together, neath great stretching hall roof. Chapter 14. Rejoicing of the Danes. At early dawn, warriors from far and near come together to hear of the knight's adventures. In the mist of the morning, many a warrior stood round the gift hall, as the story is told me. Folk princes fared then from far and from near, through long stretching journeys to look at the wonder, the footprints of the foeman. Few warriors lamented Grendel's destruction, who gazed on the foot tracks of the inglorious creature, his parting from life, pained very deeply, how, weary in spirit, off from these regions in combats conquered, he carried his traces, fated and flying, to the flood of the Knickers. Grendel's blood dyes the waters. There in bloody billows bubbled the currents. The angry eddy was everywhere mingled and seething with gore, welling with sword blood. He death-doomed had hid him, when reaved of his joyance, he laid down his life in the lair he had fled to. His heathenish spirit where hell did receive him, thence the friends from of old backward turned them, and many a younker from merry adventure, striding their stallions, stout from the seaward, heroes on horses. They were heard very often. Beowulf is the hero of the hour. Beowulf's praises, many often asserted that neither south nor north in the circuit of waters, he is regarded as a probable successor to Hrothgar, o'er outstretching earth plain, none other was better mid bearers of war shields, more worthy to govern, neath the arch of the ether, Not any, however, 'gainst the friend lord muttered, mocking words uttered. But no word is uttered to derogate from the old king. Of Hrothgar, the gracious, a good king he, oft the fame ones permitted their fallow-skinned horses to run in rivalry, racing and chasing, where the field ways appeared to them fair and inviting. Known for their excellence, oft a thane of the folklore, the gleeman sings the deeds of heroes. A man of celebrity, mindful of rhythms, who ancient traditions treasured in memory, new word groups found properly bound, the bard after gan then Beowulf's venture, he sings in alliterative measures of Beowulf's prowess. Wisely to tell of, and words that were clever to utter skilfully, earnestly speaking, everything told he that he heard as to Sigmund's, also of Sigemund, who has slain a great fire-dragon. Mighty achievements, many things hidden, the strife of the whale sing, the wide-going ventures, the children of men knew of but little, the feud and the fury, but for tailor with him, when such like matters he minded to speak of, uncle to nephew, as in every contention. Each to other was ever devoted, a numerous host of the race of the Scathers, they had slain with the sword edge. To Sigmund accrued then no little of glory when his life days were over, since he sturdy in struggle had destroyed the great dragon, the hoard treasure's keeper, neath the hoar-greyish stone he, the son of the atheling, unaided, adventured, the perilous project, not present was for tailor, yet the fortune beheld him of forcing his weapon through the marvellous dragon, that it stood in the wall, well-honoured weapon. The worm was slaughtered, the great one had gained then by his glorious achievement, to reap from the ring-hoard richest enjoyment, as best it did please him. His vessel he loaded, shining ornaments on the ship's bosom carried, kinsman of Wales, the drake in heat melted. Sigemund was widely famed. He was farthest famed of fugitive pilgrims, mid white scattered world folk, for works of great prowess, war troopers' shelter, hence waxed he in honour. Heremod, an unfortunate Danish king, is introduced by way of contrast. Afterward, Heremod's hero strength failed him. His vigour and valour, mid venomous haters, to the hands of foemen he was foully delivered, oft driven early. Agony billows, unlike Sigemund and Beowulf, Heremod was a burden to his people. Oppressed him too long. To his people he became then, to all the athelings, an ever great burden. And the daring one's journey in days of yore, many wise men were wont to deplore, such as hoped he would bring them help in their sorrow, that the son of their ruler should rise into power, holding the headship held by his fathers, should govern the people, the gold-hauled and borough, the kingdom of heroes, the realm of the Shieldings. Beowulf is an honour to his race. He, to all men, became then far more beloved, Hygelac's kinsman to kindreds and races, to his friends much dearer, him malice assaulted. The story is resumed. Oft running and racing on roadsters they measured the dun-coloured highways. Then the light of the morning was hurried and hastened. Went henchmen in numbers to the beautiful building, bold ones in spirit, to look at the wonder. The liege lord himself then, from his wife bower wending, warden of treasures, glorious trod with troopers unnumbered, famed for his virtues, and with him the queen wife measured the mead ways with maidens attending. Chapter 15. Hrothgar's Gratitude. Hrothgar discoursed to the hall building when he stood by the pillar, saw the steep rising hall roof, gleaming with gold gems, and Grendel his hand there. Hrothgar gives thanks for the overthrow of the monster. For the sight we behold now, thanks to the wielder, early be offered. Much evil I bided, snaring from Grendel. God can he accomplish wonder on wonder, wielder of glory. I had given up all hope when this brave liegeman came to our aid. But lately I reckon ne'er under heaven comfort to gain me for any of sorrows, while the handsomest of houses, horrid with blood-stain, gory uptowered, grief had off-frighted each of the wise ones who weened not that ever the folk troops' defences gainst foes they should strengthen, gainst sprites and monsters. Through the might of the wielder, a doughty retainer hath a deed now accomplished, which erstwhile we all with our excellent wisdom, if his mother yet liveth, well may she thank God for this son, failed to perform, may affirm very truly, what woman soever in all of the nations give birth to the child, if yet she surviveth, that the long-ruling lord was lavish to Hereward in the birth of the bairn. Now, Beowulf dear, hereafter, Beowulf, thou shalt be my son. Most excellent hero, I'll love thee in spirit as bairn of my body. Bear well henceforward the relationship new. No lack shall befall thee of earth joys any I ever can give thee. Full often for lesser service I've given. Hero, less hardy, hoard treasure precious. Thou hast won immortal distinction. To a weaker in war strife, by works of distinction thou hast gained for thyself now, that thy glory shall flourish, for ever and ever. The All-Ruler quiet thee with good from his hand, as he hitherto did thee. Beowulf replies, I was most happy to render thee this service. Beowulf answered, Ecgtheow's offspring, that labour of glory most gladly achieved we. The combat accomplished, unquailing we ventured the enemy's grapple. I would grant it much rather thou wert able to look at the creature in person, faint unto falling the foe in his trappings. On murder bed quickly I minded to bind him with firm holding fetters, that forced by my grapple, lo he should lie in life and death struggle. Lest his body escape, I was wholly unable. I could not keep the monster from escaping, as God did not will that I should. Since God did not will it, to keep him from going, not held him that firmly hated opposer. Too swift was the foeman, yet safety regarding, he suffered his hand behind him to linger, his arm and shoulder to act as watcher. He left his hand and arm behind. No shadow of solace, the woe-begone creature found him there nathless. The hated destroyer liveth no longer, lashed for his evils, but sorrow hath seized him, in snare meshes hath him close in its clutches, keepeth him writhing in baleful bonds. There, banished for evil, the man shall wait for the mighty tribunal. God will give him his deserts. How the God of glory shall give him his earnings. Then the soldier kept silent, son of old Eglaf. Unferth has nothing more to say, for Beowulf's actions speak louder than words. From boasting and bragging of battle achievements, since the princes beheld there the hand that depended neath the lofty hall timbers by the might of the nobleman. Each one before him, the enemy's fingers, each fingernail strong steel most resembled, the heathen one's handspur, the hero in battle's claw most uncanny, quoth they agreeing, no sword will harm the monster. That not any excellent edges of brave ones was willing to touch him, the terrible creature's battle hand bloody to bear away from him. Chapter 16. Hrothgar lavishes gifts upon his deliverer. Heorot is adorned with hands. Then straight was ordered that Heorot inside with hands he embellished, a host of them gathered, of men and women, who the wassailing building the guest hall begeared. Gold-flashing sparkled webs on the walls then, of wonders a many to each of the heroes that look on such objects. The hall is defaced, however. The beautiful building was broken to pieces, which all within with irons was fastened, its hinges torn off. Only the roof was whole and uninjured when the horrible creature, outlawed for evil, off had betaken him, hopeless of living. 'Tis hard to avoid it, a vague passage of 5 verses. Whoever will do it, but he doubtless must come to the place awaiting, as what hath appointed soul-bearers, earth-dwellers, earls under heaven. Where bound on its bed his body shall slumber. Hrothgar goes to the banquet. When feasting is finished, full was the time then that the son of Halfdenu went to the building. The excellent Atheling would eat of the banquet. Ne'er heard I that people with hero band larger bear them better towards their bracelet bestower. The laden with glory stooped to the bench then. Their kinsmen companions in plenty were joyful, many a cupful quaffing complacently. Doughty of spirit, in the high towering palace, Hrothgar's nephew Hrothulf is present. Hrothgar and Hrothulf. Heorot then inside was filled with friendly ones, falsehood and treachery. The folk shieldings now no wise did practice. Hrothgar lavishes gifts upon Beowulf. Then the offspring of Halfdenu ordered to Beowulf a golden standard, as reward for the victory a banner embossed, byrnie and helmet. Many men saw then the song-famous weapon borne for the hero. Beowulf drank of the cup in the building, that treasure bestowing. He needed not blush, for in battle men's presence, for handsomer gifts were never presented. Ne'er heard I that many on the ale bench in friendlier fashion to their fellows presented 4 bright jewels with goldwork embellished. Round the roof of the helmet a head garter outside, braided with wires, with bosses was furnished, that swords for the battle, fight hardened, might fail him, boldly to harm him. When the hero proceeded, Hrothgar commands that 8 finely caparisoned steeds be brought to Beowulf. Forth against foemen, the defender of earls then commanded that 8 steeds with bridles, gold-plated, gleaming, be guided to the holward inside the building. On one of them stood then an art-broidered saddle, embellished with jewels. 'Twas the sovereign's seat, when the son of King Healfdenu was pleased to take part in the play of the edges. The famous one's valour ne'er failed at the front when slain ones were bowing, and to Beowulf granted the prince of the Ingwins power over both. O'er war steeds and weapons bade him well to enjoy them. In so manly a manner the mighty famed chieftain, hordward of heroes with horses and jewels, war storms requited, that none e'er condemneth who willeth to tell the truth with full justice. Chapter 17. Banquet continued. The Scops' song of Finn and Hanaf. Each of Beowulf's companions receives a costly gift. And the atheling of earlmen to each of the heroes who the ways of the waters went with Beowulf, a costly gift token, gave on the mead bench, offered an heirloom, and ordered that that man, the warrior killed by Grendel, is to be paid for in gold, with gold should be paid for, whom Grendel had erstwhile wickedly slaughtered, as he more of them had done. Had far-seeing God and the mood of the hero the fate not averted, the Father then governed all of the earth-dwellers, as he ever is doing. Hence, insight for all men is everywhere fittest, forethought of spirit. Much he shall suffer, of lief and of loathsome, who long in this present useth the world in this woeful existence. There was music and merriment mingling together. Hrothgar's Scop recalls events in the reign of his lord's father. Touching Healfdenu's leader, the joy-wood was fingered, measures recited, when the singer of Hrothgar on mead bench should mention the merry hall joyance of the kinsmen of Finn when onset surprised them. Hanaf, the Danish general, is treacherously attacked while staying at Finn's castle. The half-Danish hero, Hanaf of the Shieldings, on the field of the Frisians was fated to perish. Sure, Hildeburh needed not mention approving the faith of the Jutemen, though blameless entirely. Queen Hildeburh is not only wife of Finn, but a kinswoman of the murdered Hanaf. When shields were shivered, she was shorn of her darlings, of bairns and brothers. They bent to their fate, with war-spear wounded. Woe was that woman, not causeless lamented the daughter of Hoke, the decree of the wielder, when morning light came, and she was able neath heaven to behold the destruction of brothers and bairns. Were the brightest of earth joys, Finn's force is almost exterminated. She had hitherto had all the henchmen of Finn war had oft taken, save a handful remaining, that he no wise was able to offer resistance. Hengist succeeds Hanaf as Danish general. To the onset of Hengist in the parley of battle, nor the wretched remnant to rescue in war from the Earl of the Atheling, but they offered conditions, compact between the Frisians and the Danes, another great building to fully make ready, a hall and a high seat, that half they might rule with, the sons of the Jutemen, and that Folkwarder's son would day after day the Danemen honour when gifts were giving, and grant of his ring-store to Hengest's earl troop ever so freely, of his gold-plated jewels, as he encouraged the Frisians, equality of gifts agreed on the bench of the beer hall. On both sides they swore then a fast-binding compact. Finn unto Hengist, with no thought of revoking, vowed then most solemnly the woe-begone remnant well to take charge of, his Witan advising. The agreement should no one by words or works weaken and shatter, by artifice ever injure its value. Though reaved of their ruler, their ring-giver's slayer, they followed as vassals, fate so requiring. No one shall refer to old grudges. Then if one of the Frisians the quarrel should speak of, in tones that were taunting, terrible edges should cut in acquittal. Accomplished the oath was, and treasure of gold from the hoard was uplifted. Danish warriors are burned on a funeral pyre. The best of the shielding braves was then fully prepared for the pile. At the pyre was seen clearly the blood-gory Birnie, the boar with his gilding, the iron-hard swine, athelings many fatally wounded. No few had been slaughtered. Hildeburh bade them, then, at the burning of Anaf. Queen Hildeburh has her son burnt along with Anaf. The bairn of her bosom, to bear to the fire, that his body be burned, and borne to the pyre. The woe-stricken woman wept on his shoulder, in measures lamented, up-mounted the hero. The greatest of dead fires curled to the welkin, on the hill's front crackled, heads were a-melting, wound doors bursting, while the blood was a-coursing, from body bite fierce, the fire devoured them, greediest of spirits, whom war had off-carried, from both of the peoples their bravest were fallen. Chapter 18. The Finn episode continued. The banquet continues. The survivors go to Friesland, the home of Finn. Then the warriors departed to go to their dwellings, reaved of their friends, Friesland to visit their homes and high city. Hengist continued. Hengist remains there all winter, unable to get away, biding with Finn the blood-tainted winter, wholly unsundered. Of fatherland thought he, though unable to drive the ring-stemmed vessel o'er the ways of the waters the wave-deeps were tossing. Fought with the wind, winter in ice bonds closed up the currents, till there came to the dwelling a year in its course, as yet it revolveth, if season propitious one always regardeth, world-cheering weathers. Then winter was gone, earth's bosom was lovely, the exile would get him. He devises schemes of vengeance. The guest from the palace, on gruesomest vengeance, he brooded more eager than on oversea journeys, where, on set of anger, he were able to accomplish the bairns of the duteman therein to remember. No wise refused he the duties of liegeman, when Hun of the Frisians the battle-sword lay fing. Fairest of falchions, friendly did give him. Its edges were famous in folk talk of Jutland, and savage sword fury seized in its clutches. Bold mooded Finn, where he bode in his palace. Guthlaf and Oslaf revenge Hanaf's slaughter. When the gruesome grapple Guthlaf and Oslaf had mournfully mentioned the mere journey over, for sorrows half blamed him, the flickering spirit could not bide in his bosom. Then the building was covered. Finn is slain, with corpses of foemen, and Finn too was slaughtered, the king with his comrades, and the queen made a prisoner. The jewels of Finn and his queen are carried away by the Danes. The troops of the Scyldings bore to their vessels all that the Land King had in his palace. Such trinkets and treasures they took as, on searching, at Finn's they could find. They ferried to Daneland the excellent woman on oversea journey. The lay is concluded, and the main story is resumed. Led her to their landfolk. The lay was concluded, the gleeman's recital. Shouts again rose then, bench glee resounded, bearers then offered. Skinkers carry around the beaker. Wine from wonder vats, whilst Theo advanced then, going neath gold crown, where the good ones were seated. Queen Walchtheo greets Hrothgar, as he sits beside Hrothulf, his nephew. Uncle and nephew, their peace was yet mutual, true each to the other, and Unferth, the spokesman, sat at the feet of the Lord of the Scyldings. Each trusted his spirit, that his mood was courageous. Though at fight he had failed in faith to his kinsman, said the Queen of the Scyldings, My lord and protector, treasure bestower, take thou this beaker, joyance attend thee, gold friend of heroes, be generous to the Geats, and greet thou the Geat men with gracious responses. So ought one to do. Be kind to the Geat men, in gifts not niggardly. And near and afar now, peace thou enjoyest. Report hath informed me thou'lt have for a bairn the battle-brave hero. Now is Heorot cleansed, ring palace gleaming, have as much joy as possible in thy hall, once more purified. Give while thou mayest many rewards, and bequeath to thy kinsman kingdom and people. On wending thy way to the wielder's splendour, I know, good Hrothulf, that the noble young troopers, I know that Hrothulf will prove faithful if he survive thee. He'll care for and honour Lord of the Scyldings, if earth joys thou endest earlier than he doth. I reckon that recompense he'll render with kindness. Our offspring and issue, if that all he remember, what favours of yore, when he yet was an infant, we awarded to him for his worship and pleasure. Then she turned by the bench where her sons were carousing, Hrethric and Hrothmund, and the hero's offspring. Beowulf is sitting by the two royal sons. The war youth together, there the good one was sitting, twixt the brothers twain, Beowulf Geatman. Chapter 19. Beowulf receives further honour. More gifts are offered Beowulf. A beaker was born him, and bidding to quaff it graciously given, and gold that was twisted pleasantly proffered, a pair of arm jewels, rings and corslet, of collars the greatest I've heard of neath heaven. Of heroes not any more splendid from jewels have I heard neath the welkin. A famous necklace is referred to in comparison with the gems presented to Beowulf, since Harmar oft bore the bruising men's necklace, the bracteates and jewels from the bright shining city. Ormenric's cunning craftiness fled from chose gain everlasting. Geatish Higelac, grandson of Swerting, last had this jewel when tramping neath banner the treasure he guarded, the field spoil defended. Fate oft carried him when for deeds of daring he endured tribulation. Hate from the Frisians, the ornaments bare he o'er the cup of the currents, costly gem treasures, mighty folk leader, he fell neath his target. The corpse of the king then came into charge of the race of the Frank men. The mail shirt and collar, war men less noble, plundered the fallen when the fight was finished. The folk of the Geatman, the field of the dead, held in possession the choicest of mead halls with cheering resounded. Walchtheo discoursed, the war troop addressed she. Queen Walchtheo magnifies Beowulf's achievements. This collar enjoy thou, Beowulf worthy young man, in safety, and use thou this armour, gems of the people, and prosper thou fully. Show thyself sturdy, and be to these liegemen mild with instruction. I'll mind thy requital. Thou hast brought it to pass that far and near, forever and ever, earthmen shall honour thee, even so widely as ocean surroundeth the blustering bluffs. Be, while thou livest, a wealth-blessed atheling. I wish thee most truly, may gifts never fail thee. Jewels and treasure, be kind to my son, thou living in joyance. Here each of the nobles is true unto other, gentle in spirit, loyal to leader. The liegemen are peaceful, the war troops ready, well-drunken heroes. Do as I bid ye. Then she went to the settle. There was choicest of banquets. Wine drank the heroes. They little know of the sorrow in store for them. Weird they knew not, destiny cruel, as to many an earlman early it happened, when evening had come and Hrothgar had parted off to his manor, the mighty to slumber. Warriors unnumbered warded the building as erst they did often. The ale settle bared they. 'Twas covered all over with beds and pillows. A doomed thane is there with them, doomed unto death, down to slumber, bowed then a bier thane. Their battle shields placed they, bright shining targets, up by their heads then, o'er the atheling on ale bench. 'Twas easy to see their battle high helmet, byrnie of ring mail. They were always ready for battle, and mighty war spear. 'Twas the wont of that people to constantly keep them equipped for the battle, at home or marching, in either condition, at seasons just such as necessity ordered, as best for their ruler. That people was worthy. Chapter 20. The mother of Grendel. They sank then to slumber. With sorrow one paid for his evening repose, as often betide them, while Grendel was holding the gold-bedecked palace, ill deeds performing, till his end overtook him, death for his sins. 'Twas seen very clearly. Grendel's mother is known to be thirsting for revenge. Known unto earth folk that still an avenger outlived the loathed one, long since the sorrow caused by the struggle. The mother of Grendel, devil-shaped woman, her woe ever minded, who was held to inhabit the horrible waters. Grendel's progenitor, Cain, is again referred to. The cold-flowing currents, after Cain had become a slayer with edges. To his one only brother, the son of his sire, he set out then banished, marked as a murderer, man-joys avoiding, lived in the desert, thence demons unnumbered. The poet again magnifies Beowulf's valour. Fate sent a woke, one of them Grendel, sword-cursed, hateful, who at Heorot met with a man that was watching, waiting the struggle, where a horrid one held him with hand-grapple sturdy. Nathless he minded the might of his body, the glorious gift God had allowed him, and folk ruling of father's favour relied on, his help and his comfort, so he conquered the foeman. the hell spirit humbled. He unhappy departed then, reaved of his joyance, journeying to death haunts, foeman of man. His mother, moreover, Grendel's mother, comes to avenge her son. Eager and gloomy was anxious to go on her mournful mission, mindful of vengeance for the death of her son. She came then to Heorot, where the Armadain earlmen, all through the building, were lying in slumber. Soon there became then return to the nobles, when the mother of Grendel entered the folk hall. The fear was less grievous by even so much as the vigour of maidens, war strength of women, by warrior is reckoned, when well-carved weapon worked with the hammer, blade very bloody, brave with its edges, strikes down the boar sign that stands on the helmet. Then the hard-edged weapon was heaved in the building. The brand o'er the benches, broad lindens, many hand fast, were lifted. For helmet he recked not, for armour net broad, whom terror laid hold of. She went then hastily, outward would get her life for to save, when some one did spy her. She seizes a favourite liegeman of Hrothgar's. Soon she had grappled one of the athelings fast and firmly, when fenward she hied her. That one to Hrothgar was liefest of heroes, in rank of retainer, where waters encircle a mighty shield warrior, whom she murdered at slumber. A broadly famed battle knight. Beowulf was absent. Beowulf was asleep in another part of the palace, but another apartment was erstwhile devoted to the glory-decked Geatman, when gold was distributed. There was hubbub in Heorot, the hand that was famous, she grasped in its gore. Grief was renewed then in homes and houses. 'Twas no happy arrangement in both of the quarters to barter and purchase with lives of their friends. Then the well-aged ruler, the grey-headed war thane, was woeful in spirit, when his long-trusted liegeman, lifeless, he knew of. Beowulf is sent for. His dearest one gone. Quick from a room was Beowulf brought, brave and triumphant. As day was dawning in the dusk of the morning, he comes at Hrothgar's summons. Went then that earlman, champion noble, came with comrades, where the clever one bided, where the god all-gracious would grant him a respite after the woe he had suffered. The war-worthy hero, with the troop of retainers, trod then the pavement. The whole building groaned till he greeted the wise one. Beowulf inquires how Hrothgar had enjoyed his night's rest. The Earl of the Ingwins asked if the night had fully refreshed him, as fain he would have it. Chapter 21. Hrothgar's account of the monsters. Hrothgar laments the death of Asheru, his shoulder companion. Hrothgar rejoined, helm of the Scyldings, ask not of joyance, grief is renewed to the folk of Danemen. Dead is Asheru, Jormunlaf's brother, older than he, my true-hearted counsellor, trusty adviser, shoulder companion. When fighting in battle, our heads we protected. When troopers were clashing, he was my ideal hero. And heroes were dashing. Such an earl should be ever worthy and erst-worthy atheling. As Asheru proved him, the flickering death spirit became in Heorot his hand-to-hand murderer. I cannot tell whither the cruel one turned in the carcass, exulting. This horrible creature came to avenge Grendel's death. By cramming discovered the quarrel she wreaked then, but last night Egon Grendel thou killedst, in gruesomest manner, with grim-holding clutches, since too long he had lessened my liege troop and wasted my folkmen so foully. He fell in the battle, with forfeit of life, and another has followed, a mighty crime-worker, her kinsman avenging, and henceforth hath stabilized her hatred unyielding, as it well may appear to many a liegeman, who mourneth in spirit, the treasure bestower. Her heavy heart sorrow, the hand is now lifeless, which availed you in every wish that you cherished. I have heard my vassals speak of these two uncanny monsters who lived in the moors. Land people heard I, liegeman, this saying. Dwellers in halls they had seen very often a pair of such mighty march-striding creatures, far-dwelling spirits, holding the moorlands. One of them wore, as well they might notice, the image of woman. The other one, wretched in guise of a man, wandered in exile. Except he was huger than any of earthmen. Earth-dwelling people entitled him Grendel in days of yore. They know not their father. Where ill-going spirits any were born him, They inhabit the most desolate and horrible places. Ever before, they guard the wolf coverts, lands inaccessible, wind-beaten nesses, fearfullest fen deeps, where a flood from the mountains, neath mists of the nesses netherward rattles, the stream under earth. Not far is it henceward, measured by mile lengths that the mere water standeth, which forests hang over, with frost-whiting covered, a firm-rooted forests, the floods overshadow. There ever at night one an ill-meaning portent a fire-flood may see. Among children of men none liveth so wise that wot of the bottom. Though harassed by hounds, the heath-stepper seek for. Even the hounded deer will not seek refuge in these uncanny regions. Fly to the forest, firm-antlered he-deer, spurred from afar, his spirit he yieldeth. His life on the shore, ere in he will venture to cover his head. Uncanny the place is, thence upward ascendeth the surging of waters. Wan to the welkin, when the wind is stirring, the weather's unpleasing, till the air groweth gloomy. To thee only can I look for assistance. And the heavens lower. Now is help to be gotten, from thee and thee only. The abode thou knowest not, the dangerous place where thou art able to meet with the sin-laden hero. Seek, if thou darest. For the feud I will fully fee thee with money, with old-time treasure, as erstwhile I did thee, with well-twisted jewels, if away thou shalt get thee. Chapter 22. Beowulf seeks Grendel's mother. Beowulf answered, Ecgtheow's son. Beowulf exhorts the old king to arouse himself for action. Grieve not, O wise one, for each it is better his friend to avenge than with vehemence wail him. Each of us must the end day abide of his earthly existence, who is able, accomplished, glory ere death. To battle vain noble, lifeless, lying. 'Tis at last most fitting. Arise, O king, quick, let us hasten to look at the footprint of the kinsman of Grendel. I promise thee this now, to his place he'll escape not, to embrace of the earth, nor to mountainous forest, nor to depths of the ocean, wherever he wanders. Practise thou now patient endurance of each of thy sorrows, as I hope for thee soothly. Hrothgar rises himself. His horse is brought. Then up sprang the old one. The all-wielder thanked he, ruler almighty, that the man had outspoken. Then for Hrothgar a war-horse was decked with a bridle, curly-maned courser. The clever folk-leader, they start on the track of the female monster, stately proceeded. Stepped then an earl-troop of linden wood-bearers. Her footprints were seen then widely in wood-paths, her way o'er the bottoms where she far away fared, o'er fen country, murky, bore away breathless, the best of retainers, who pondered with Hrothgar the welfare of country. The son of the Athelings then went o'er the stony, declivitous cliffs, the close-covered passes, narrow passages, paths unfrequented, nesses abrupt, nicker haunts many. One of a few of wise-mooded heroes, he onward advanced to view the surroundings, till he found unawares woods of the mountain o'er hoar stones hanging, haltward unjoyful. The water stood under, welling and gory. 'Twas irksome in spirit to all of the Danemen, friends of the Scyldings, to many a liegeman. The sight of Asheru's head causes them great sorrow. Sad to be suffered, a sorrow unlittle, to each of the earlmen, when to Asheru's head they came on the cliff. The current was seething with blood and with gore. The troopers gazed on it. The horn anon sang the battle song ready. The troop were all seated. They saw long the water then. The water is filled with serpents and sea dragons. Many a serpent, mere dragons wondrous, trying the waters, nickers are lying on the cliffs of the nesses, which at noonday full often go on the sea deeps their sorrowful journey, wild beasts and worm kind. Away then they hastened. One of them is killed by Beowulf. Hot-mooded, hateful, they heard the great clamour, the war-trumpet winding. One did the great prince sunder from earth joys with arrow from bowstring. From his sea-struggle tore him, that the trusty war-missile, the dead beast is a poor swimmer, pierced to his vitals. He proved in the currents less doughty at swimming, whom death had off-carried. Soon in the waters the wonderful swimmer was straitened most sorely with sword-pointed boar-spears. Pressed in the battle and pulled to the cliff edge, The liegeman then looked on the loath-fashioned stranger. Beowulf prepares for a struggle with the monster. Beowulf donned then his battle equipments, cared little for life. Inlaid and most ample, the hand-woven corslet which could cover his body must the wave deeps explore, that war might be powerless to harm the great hero, and the hating one's grasp might not peril his safety. His head was protected by the light flashing helmet that should mix with the bottoms, trying the eddies, treasure emblazoned, encircled with jewels, as in seasons long past. The weaponsmith worked it, wondrously made it, with swine bodies fashioned it, that thenceforward no longer brand might bite it, and battle's sword hurt it, and that was not least of helpers in prowess. He has Unferth's sword in his hand, that Hrothgar's spokesman had lent him when straitened, and the hilted hand-sword was Hrunting entitled, old and most excellent among all of the treasures. Its blade was of iron, blotted with poison, hardened with gore. It failed not in battle any hero under heaven in hand who it brandished, who ventured to take the terrible journeys the battlefield sought, not the earliest occasion that deeds of daring 'twas destined to accomplish. Unferth has little use for swords. Iclaf's kinsman minded not soothly, exulting in strength, what erst he had spoken, drunken with wine, when the weapon he lent to a sword hero bolder. Himself did not venture, neath the strife of the currents, his life to endanger. To famed deeds perform, there he forfeited glory, repute for his strength. Not so with the other, when he clad in his corslet had equipped him for battle. Chapter 23. Beowulf's fight with Grendel's mother. Beowulf makes a parting speech to Hrothgar. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son. Recall now, O famous kinsman of Halfdenu, prince very prudent, now to part I am ready, gold friend of earlmen, what erst we agreed on, if I fail, act as a kind liege lord to my thanes. Should I lay down my life in lending thee assistance, when my earth joys were over, thou wouldst evermore serve me instead of a father, my faithful thanemen, my trusty retainers, protect thou and care for, fall I in battle, and Hrothgar beloved, and send Hygelac the jewels thou hast given me. Send unto Hygelac the high-valued jewels thou to me hast allotted, the lord of the Geatman may perceive from the gold, the Hrethelling may see it. I should like my king to know how generous a lord I found thee to be. When he looks on the jewels, that to Jim-giver found I, good over measure, enjoyed him while able, and the ancient heirloom, Unferth permit thou, the famed one, to have the heavy sword splendid, the hard-edged weapon, with Hrunting to aid me. I shall gain me glory, or grim death shall take me. Beowulf is eager for the fray. The Atheling of Geatman uttered these words, and heroic did hasten, not any rejoinder was willing to wait for. The wave current swallowed, he is a whole day reaching the bottom of the sea, the doughty in battle. Then a day's length elapsed ere he was able to see the sea at its bottom. Early she found then who, 50 of winters, the course of the currents kept in her fury, grisly and greedy, that the grim one's dominion, Grendel's mother knows that someone has reached her domains. Someone of men from above was exploring. Forth did she grab them, grappled the warrior with horrible clutches, yet no sooner she injured his body unscathed, the byrnie outguarded, that she proved but powerless to pierce through the armour. The limb-mail locked, with loath-grabbing fingers, the sea-wolf bare then, when bottomward came she grabs him and bears him to her den. The ring-prince homeward, that he after was powerless, he had daring to do it, to deal with his weapons, but many a mere beast tormented him, swimming. Sea monsters bite and strike him. Flood beasts, no few, with fierce biting tusks, did break through his byrnie. The brave one pursued they. The earl then discovered he was down in some cavern where no water whatever anywise harmed him, and the clutch of the current could come not anear him, since the roofed hall prevented brightness a-gleaming. Firelight he saw, flashing resplendent. The good one saw then the sea-bottom's monster. Beowulf attacks the mother of Grendel. The mighty mere woman, he made a great onset with weapon of battle. His hand not desisted from striking. That war-blade struck on her head. Then a battle-song greedy. The stranger perceived then the sword will not bite. The sword would not bite. her life would not injure, but the falchion failed the folk prince when straightened. Erst had it often onsets encountered, oft cloven the helmet, the fated one's armour. 'Twas the first time that ever the excellent jewel had failed of its fame. Firm-mooded after, not heedless of valour, but mindful of glory, was Higelac's kinsman. The hero chief angry cast then his carved sword covered with jewels, that it lay on the earth, hard and steel-pointed. The hero throws down all weapons and again trusts to his hand-grip. He hoped in his strength, his hand-grapple sturdy, so any must act, whenever he thinketh, to gain him in battle glory unending, and is reckless of living. The lord of the war Geats, he shrank not from battle, seized by the shoulder. The mother of Grendel, then, mighty in struggle, swung he his enemy, since his anger was kindled, that she fell to the floor. With furious grapple, Beowulf falls. She gave him requital early thereafter, and stretched out to grab him, the strongest of warriors, faint-mooded, stumbled, till he fell in his traces. The monster sits on him with drawn sword. Foot-going champion. Then she sat on the hall guest and wielded her war-knife, wide-bladed, flashing. For her son would take vengeance, her one only bairn. His armour saves his life. His breast armour woven bowed on his shoulder. It guarded his life, the entrance defended gainst sore point and edges. Ecgtheow's son there had fatally journeyed, champion of Geatman. In the arms of the ocean had the armour not given, close-woven corselet, comfort and succour. God arranged for his escape, and had God, most holy, not awarded the victory, all-knowing Lord, easily did heaven's ruler most righteous arrange it with justice. Uprose he erect, ready for battle. Chapter 24. Beowulf is double conqueror. Beowulf grasps the giant sword. Then he saw mid the war gems a weapon of victory, an ancient giant sword, of edges a doughty, glory of warriors. Of weapons 'twas choicest, only 'twas larger than any man else was able to bear to the battle encounter, the good and splendid work of the giants. He grasped then the sword hilt, knight of the Shieldings, bold and battle-grim, brandished his ring sword, hopeless of living, hotly he smote her, that the fiend-woman's neck firmly it grappled, and fells the female monster, broke through her bone joints, the bill fully pierced her, fate-cursed body. She fell to the ground then, the hand-sword was bloody, the hero exalted, the brand was brilliant, brightly it glimmered, just as from heaven gem-like shineth the torch of the firmament. He glanced along the building, and turned by the wall then, Higelac's vassal, raging and wrathful, raised his battle-sword, strong by the handle. The edge was not useless to the hero in battle, but he speedily wished to give Grendel requital for the many assaults he had worked on the West Danes, not once, but often, when he slew in slumber the subjects of Hrothgar, swallowed down 15 sleeping retainers of the folk of the Danemen, and fully as many carried away, a horrible prey. He gave them requital. Grim raging champion, Beowulf seized the body of Grendel, and cuts off his head. When he saw on his rest-place, weary of conflict, Grendel lying, of life joys bereaved, as the battle at Heorot erstwhile had scathed him, his body far bounded, a blow when he suffered, death having seized him, sword smiting heavy, and he cut off his head then. Early this noticed, the clever carles who, as comrades of Hrothgar, the waters are gory, gazed on the sea-deeps, that the surging wave-currents were mightily mingled. The mere flood was gory. Of the good one, the grey-haired together held converse. Beowulf is given up for dead. The hoary of head that they hope not to see again, the atheling ever, that exulting in victory he'd return there to visit the distinguished folk ruler. Then many concluded the mere wolf had killed him. The 9th hour came then. From the Ness edge departed, the bold mooded Shieldings, the gold friend of heroes, homeward betook him. The strangers sat down then, soul-sick, sorrowful, the sea-waves regarding. They wished and yet weened not their well-loved friend lord, the giant sword melts, to see any more. The sword blade began then, the blood having touched it, contracting and shrivelling with battle icicles. 'Twas a wonderful marvel that it melted entirely, likest to ice, when the Father unbindeth the bond of the frost, and unwindeth the wave bands, he who wieldeth dominion of times and of tides, a truth-firm creator, nor took he of jewels, more in the dwelling, lord of the waders, though they all lay around him, and the head and the handle handsome with jewels. The brand early melted, burnt was the weapon. So hot was the blood, the strange spirit poisonous, the hero swims back to the realms of day. That in it did perish, he early swam off then, who had bided in combat with the carnage of haters, went up through the ocean, the eddies were cleansed, the spacious expanses when the spirit from far land his life put aside, and this short-lived existence, the seaman's defender, came swimming to land then, doughty of spirit, rejoiced in his sea gift. The bulky burden which he bore in his keeping, the excellent vassals, advanced then to meet him. To God they were grateful, were glad in their chieftain, that to see him safe and sound was granted them. From the high-minded hero then, helmet and byrnie were speedily loosened. The ocean was putrid, the water neath welkin weltered with gore. Forth did they fare then, their footsteps retracing, merry and mirthful, measured the earth-way, the highway familiar. Men, very daring, bear then the head from the sea-cliff, burdening each of the earlmen, excellent, valiant. It takes 4 men to carry Grendel's head on a spear. 4 of them had to carry with labour the head of Grendel to the high towering gold hall, upstuck on a spear, till 14 most valiant and battle-brave Geatmen came there, going straight to the palace. The prince of the people measured the meadways, their mood-brave companion, the atheling of earlmen, entered the building, deed-valiant man, adorned with distinction, doughty shield warrior, to address King Hrothgar. Then hung by the hair, the head of Grendel was borne to the building, where beer thanes were drinking. Loth before earlmen, and eke for the lady, the warriors beheld then a wonderful sight. Chapter 25. Beowulf brings his trophies, Hrothgar's gratitude. Beowulf relates his last exploit. Beowulf spake, offspring of Ecgtheow. Lo, we blithely have brought thee, bairn of Halfdenu, prince of the Shieldings, these presents from ocean, which thine eye looketh on, for an emblem of glory. I came off alive from this, narrowly escaping. In war, neath the water, the work with great pains performed, and the fight had been finished quite nearly, had God not defended me. I failed in the battle, aught to accomplish, aided by Hrunting. Though that weapon was worthy, but the wielder of earth-folk, God was fighting with me, gave me willingly to see on the wall a heavy old hand-sword hanging in splendour. He guided most often the lorn and the friendless. That I swung as a weapon. The wards of the house then I killed in the conflict, when occasion was given me. Then the battle-sword burned, the brand that was lifted, as the blood-current sprang, hottest of war-sweats. Seizing the hilt from my foes, I off-bore it. I avenged, as I ought to, their acts of malignity, the murder of Dane men. I then make thee this promise. Heorot is freed from monsters. Thou'lt be able in Heorot careless to slumber, with thy throng of heroes, and the thanes of thy people, every and each of greater and lesser, and thou needest not fear for them from the self-same direction, as thou formerly fearedst, O folk-lord of Shieldings, end day for earlmen. To the age-hoary man, then, the famous sword is presented to Hrothgar. The grey-haired chieftain, the gold-fashioned sword hilt, old work of giants, was thereupon given. Since the fall of the fiends, it fell to the keeping of the wielder of Danemen, the wonder-smith's labour, and the bad-mooded being abandoned this world then, opponent of God, victim of murder, and also his mother, went to the keeping of the best of the world kings, where waters encircle, who the Scot divided in shielding dominion. Hrothgar looks closely at the old sword. Hrothgar discoursed, the hilt he regarded, the ancient heirloom, where an old-time contention's beginning was graven, the gurgling currents, the flood slew thereafter the race of the giants. They had proved themselves daring. That people was loth to. It had belonged to a race hateful to God, the Lord everlasting. Through lash of the billows, the Father gave them final requital. So in letters of rune on the clasp of the handle, gleaming and golden, 'twas graven exactly, set forth and said, whom that sword had been made for, finest of irons, who first it was wrought for, wreathed at its handle and gleaming with serpents. The wise one then said, silent they all were, Hrothgar praises Beowulf, son of old Halfdenu. He may say, unrefuted, who performs mid the folk men fairness and truth. The hoary old ruler remembers the past, that better by birth is this bairn of the nobles. Thy fame is extended through faraway countries. Good friend Beowulf, o'er all of the races, thou holdest all firmly, hero-like strength with prudence of spirit. I'll prove myself grateful, as before we agreed on. Thou, granted for long, shalt become a great comfort to kinsmen and comrades. Hermod's career is again contrasted with Beowulf's. A help unto heroes, Hermod became not such to the Shieldings, successors of Ecgvæla. He grew not to please them, but grievous destruction and diresome death woes to the Dane men attracted. He slew in anger his table companions, trustworthy counsellors, till he turned off lonely from world joys away, wide famous ruler. Though high-ruling heaven in hero strength raised him, in might exalted him, o'er men of all nations, made him supreme, yet a murderous spirit grew in his bosom. He gave them no ring gems, a wretched failure of a king to give no jewels to his retainers. To the Danes, after custom, endured he unjoyful, standing the straits from strife that was raging, longsome folk sorrow. Learn then from this, lay hold of virtue. Though laden with winters, I have sung thee these measures, 'tis a marvel to tell it. Hrothgar moralizes, how all-ruling God from greatness of spirit giveth wisdom to children of men, manor and earlship, all things he ruleth. He often permitteth the mood thought of man of the illustrious lineage to lean to possessions, allows him earthly delights at his manor, a high burg of heroes to hold in his keeping, maketh portions of earth-folk hear him, and a wide-reaching kingdom, so that wisdom failing him, he himself is able to reckon its boundaries. He liveth in luxury, little debars him, nor sickness, nor age, no treachery sorrow becloudeth his spirit. Conflict nowhere, no sword-hate appeareth, but all of the world doth wend as he wisheth. The worse he knoweth not, till arrant arrogance inward pervading waxeth and springeth when the warder is sleeping, the guard of the soul with sorrows encompassed. Too sound is his slumber, the slayer is near him, who with bow and arrow aimeth in malice. Chapter 26. Hrothgar moralizes, rest after labour. A wounded spirit. Then, bruised in his bosom, he with bitter-toothed missile is hurt neath his helmet from harmful pollution. He is powerless to shield him by the wonderful mandates of the loath-cursed spirit. What too long he hath holden him seemeth too small. Savage he hoardeth, nor boastfully giveth gold-plated rings. The fate of the future flouts and forgetteth, since God had erst given him greatness no little, wielder of glory. His end day anear, it afterward happens that the bodily dwelling fleetingly fadeth, falls into ruins. Another lays hold, who doleth the ornaments, the nobleman's jewels, nothing lamenting, heedeth no terror. O Beowulf, dear, best of the heroes, from bale strife defend thee, and choose thee the better, counsels eternal. Be not overproud, life is fleeting, and its strength soon wasteth away. Beware of arrogance, world-famous champion. But a little while lasts thy life figure's fullness. 'Twill after hap early that illness, or sword edge, shall part thee from strength, or the grasp of the fire, or the wave of the current, or clutch of the edges, or flight with the war-spear, or age with its horrors, or thine eyes, bright flashing, shall fade into darkness. 'Twill happen full early, excellent hero. Hrothgar gives an account of his reign, that death shall subdue thee. So the Danes, a half-century I held under heaven, helped them in struggles, gainst many a race in Middle Earth's regions, with ashwood and edges, that enemies none on earth molested me. Lo, offsetting change now, sorrow after joy, came to my manor, grief after joyance, when Grendel became my constant visitor, inveterate hater. I, from that malice, continually travailed with trouble no little. Thanks be to God that I gained in my lifetime, to the Lord everlasting, to look on the gory head with mine eyes, after long-lasting sorrow. Go to the bench now, battle adorned, joy in the feasting, of jewels in common will meet with many when morning appeareth. The Geatman was gladsome, ganged he immediately to go to the bench, as the clever one bade him. Then again as before were the famous for prowess, hall inhabiters, handsomely banqueted, feasted anew. The night veil fell then, dark o'er the warriors. The courtiers rose then. The grey-haired was anxious to go to his slumbers. The hoary old shielding hankered the Geatman. Beowulf is fagged and seeks rest. The champion doughty greatly to rest him. And Earlman early outward did lead him, fagged from his faring, from far country springing, who, for etiquette's sake, all of a liegeman's needs regarded, such as seamen at that time were bounden to feel. The big-hearted rested, the building uptowered, spacious and gilded, the guest within slumbered, till the sable-clad raven blithely foreboded the beacon of heaven. Then the bright, shining sun o'er the bottoms came going. The warriors hastened, the heads of the peoples were ready to go again to their peoples. The Geats prepared to leave Daneland. The high-mooded farer would, far away thenceward, look for his vessel. The valiant one bade then. Unferth asked Beowulf to accept his sword as a gift. Beowulf thanks him. Offspring of Eglaf, off to bear hunting, to take his weapon, his well-beloved iron. He him thanked for the gift, saying good he accounted the war-friend and mighty, nor chid he with words then the blade of the brand. 'Twas a brave, mooded hero. When the warriors were ready, arrayed in their trappings, the atheling dear to the Danemen advanced then onto the dais, where the other was sitting. Grim-mooded hero greeted King Hrothgar. Chapter 27. Sorrow at Parting. Beowulf's Farewell. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's offspring. We men of the water wish to declare now, fared from far lands, we are firmly determined to seek King Hygelac. Here have we fitly been welcomed and feasted, as heart would desire it. Good was the greeting. If greater affection I am anywise able ever on earth to gain at thy hands, ruler of heroes, then yet I have done. I shall quickly be ready, I shall be ever ready to aid thee. For combat and conflict o'er the course of the waters, learn I that neighbours alarm thee with terror, as haters did whilom. I hither will bring thee for help unto heroes' henchmen by thousands. My liege lord will encourage me in aiding thee. I know as to Hygelac, the lord of the Geatmen, though young in years, he yet will permit me, my words and my works, ward of the people, fully to furnish thee forces, and bear thee my lance to relieve thee, if liegemen shall fail thee, and help of my hand strength. If Etheric be treating bairn of the king at the court of the Geatmen, he thereat may find him friends in abundance. Far away countries he were better to seek for who trusts in himself. Hrothgar discoursed then, making rejoinder. These words thou hast uttered, all-knowing God hath given thy spirit. O Beowulf, thou art wise beyond thy years. Ne'er heard I an earlman thus early in life, more clever in speaking. Thou art cautious of spirit, mighty of muscle, in-mouth answers prudent. I count on the hope that, happen it ever, that missile shall rob thee of Hrethal's descendant, edge horrid battle, and illness or weapon deprive thee of prince, of people's protector. Should Hygelac die, the Geats could find no better successor than thou wouldst make. And life thou yet holdest. The sea Geats will never find a more fitting folklore to choose them. Gemward of heroes, than thou mightest prove thee, if the kingdom of kinsmen thou carest to govern. Thy mood spirit likes me the longer the better, Beowulf dear. Thou hast brought it to pass, that to both these peoples peace shall be common. Thou hast healed the ancient breach between our races. To Geat folk and Danemen the strife be suspended, the secret assailings they suffered in your days, and also that jewels be shared while I govern the wide-stretching kingdom, and that many shall visit, others o'er the ocean with excellent gift gems, The ring-adorned bark shall bring o'er the currents, presents, and love gifts. This people I know toward foeman and friend firmly established. After ancient etiquette, everywise blameless, then the warden of earlmen gave him still farther parting gifts. Kinsman of Halfdenu, a dozen of jewels bade him safely seek with the presents, his well-beloved people early returning. Hrothgar kisses Beowulf and weeps. Then the noble-born king kissed the distinguished dear-loved liegeman. The Dane prince saluted him, and clasped his neck. Tears from him fell from the grey-headed man. He two things expected, aged and reverent, but rather the second, that bold in council they'd meet thereafter. The man was so dear that he failed to suppress the emotions that moved him, but in mood fetters fastened. The old king is deeply grieved to part with his benefactor. The long-famous hero longeth in secret, deep in his spirit for the dear beloved man, though not a blood kinsman. Beowulf, thenceforward gold-splendid warrior, walked o'er the meadows, exulting in treasure. The sea-going vessel, riding at anchor, awaited its owner. As they pressed on their way then, the present of Hrothgar, giving liberally as the true proof of kingship, was frequently referred to, a folk king indeed, that every way blameless, till age did debar him the joys of his might, which hath many oft injured. Chapter 28. The Homeward Journey, the Two Queens. Then the band of very valiant retainers came to the current. They were clad all in armour, the coastguard again, in link-woven burnies. The land-warder noticed the return of the earlmen, as he erstwhile had seen them. Nowise with insult he greeted the strangers from the naze of the cliff, but rode on to meet them. Said the bright-armoured visitors, vesselward travelled, welcome to waders. The wide-bosomed craft, then, lay on the sand, laden with armour, with horses and jewels. The ring-stemm'd sailor. The mast up-towered o'er the treasure of Hrothgar. Beowulf gives the guard a handsome sword. To the boatward a gold-bound brand he presented, that he was afterwards honoured on the ale-bench more highly. As the heirloom's owner, set he out on his vessel to drive on the deep. Dane country left he. Along by the mast then a sea-garment fluttered, a rope-fastened sail. The sea-boat resounded. The wind o'er the waters, the wave-floater nowise kept from its journey. The sea-goer travelled, the foamy-necked floated forth o'er the currents, the well-fashioned vessel o'er the waves of the ocean. The Geats see their own land again, till they came within sight of the cliffs of the Geatmen, the well-known headlands. The wave-goer hastened, driven by breezes, stood on the shore. The port-warden is anxiously looking for them. Prompt at the ocean, the port-ward was ready, who long in the past outlooked in the distance, at water's edge waiting well-loved heroes. He banged to the bank, then the broad-bosomed vessel fast in its fetters, lest the force of the waters should be able to injure the ocean-ward winsome. Bade he up then take the treasure of princes, plate gold and fretwork. Not far was it thence to go off in search of the giver of jewels. Hrethel's son Hygelac at home there remaineth, himself with his comrades close to the sea coast. The building was splendid, the king heroic. Great in his hall, Hygd very young was. Hygd, the noble queen of Hygelac, lavish of gifts. Fine-mooded, clever, though few were the winters, the daughter of Hereth had dwelt in the borough. But she no wise was cringing nor niggard of presents, of ornaments rare, to the race of the Geatmen. Offa's consort Thrythau is contrasted with Hygd. Thrythau nursed anger, excellent folk queen, hot burning hatred, no hero whatever among household companions, her husband excepted. She is a terror to all save her husband, dared to adventure to look at the woman with eyes in the daytime, but he knew that death chains, hand-wreathed, were wrought him early thereafter. When the hand-strife was over, edges were ready. That fierce, raging sword point had to force a decision, murder bale show. Such no womanly custom for a lady to practice, though lovely her person, that a weaver of peace, on pretence of anger, a beloved liegeman of life should deprive. Soothly this hindered Hemming's kinsman. Other ale-drinking earlmen asserted that fearful folk sorrows, fewer she wrought them, treacherous doings, since first she was given, adorned with gold, to the war hero youthful for her origin honoured, when offers great palace o'er the fallow flood by her father's instructions, she sought on her journey, where she afterwards fully, famed for her virtue, her fate on the king's seat, enjoyed in her lifetime, love did she hold with the ruler of heroes, the best, it is told me, of all the earthmen that oceans encompass, of earl kindreds endless, hence offer was famous far and widely, by gifts and by battles, spear valiant hero, the home of his fathers, he governed with wisdom, whence Eomer did issue, for help unto heroes, Hemming's kinsman, grandson of Garmund, great in encounters. Chapter 29. Beowulf and Hygelac. Then the brave one departed, his band along with him. Beowulf and his party seek Hygelac. Seeking the seashore, the sea marches treading the wide-stretching shores. The world candle glimmered, the sun from the southward. They proceeded then onward, early arriving where they heard that the troop lord, Ongentheow's slayer, excellent, youthful folk prince and warrior, was distributing jewels. Close in his castle, the coming of Beowulf was announced in a message quickly to Hygelac, that the folk troop's defender forth to the palace. The linden companion alive was advancing, secure from the combat courtward a-going. The building was early inward made ready for the foot-going guests, as the good one had ordered. Beowulf sits by his liege lord. He sat by the man, then, who had lived through the struggle, kinsman by kinsman, when the king of the people had in lordly language saluted the dear one. Queen Hygd receives the heroes. In words that were formal, the daughter of Hereth coursed through the building, carrying mead cups. She loved the retainers, tended the beakers. To the high-minded Geatman, Hygelac gan then. Hygelac is greatly interested in Beowulf's adventures, pleasantly plying his companion with questions. In the high-towering palace, a curious interest tormented his spirit. What meaning to see in the sea-Geat's adventures? Beowulf worthy, give an account of thy adventures, Beowulf dear. How throve your journeying, when thou thoughtest suddenly far o'er the salt streams to seek an encounter, a battle at Heorot, hast bettered for Hrothgar, the famous folk leader, whose far-published sorrows, any at all, in agony billows. My suspense has been great. I mused upon torture, distrusted the journey of the beloved liegeman. I long time did pray thee, by no means to seek out the murderous spirit, to suffer the South Danes themselves to decide on, grappling with Grendel. To God I am thankful to be suffered to see thee safe from thy journey. Beowulf narrates his adventures. Beowulf answered, Bairn of old Ecgtheow, 'tis hidden by no means, Hygelac chieftain, from many of men, the meeting so famous. What mournful moments of me and of Grendel were passed in the place where he, pressing affliction on the victory shieldings, scathefully brought anguish forever. That all I avenged, so that any under heaven of the kinsmen of Grendel, Grendel's kindred have no cause to boast, needeth not boast of that cry in the morning, who longest liveth of the loth-going kindred, encompassed by moorland. I came in my journey to the royal ring hall, Hrothgar to greet there. Hrothgar received me very cordially. Soon did the famous scion of Halfdenu, when he understood fully the spirit that led me, assign me a seat with the son of his bosom. The troop was in joyance, mead glee greater neath arch of the ether, not ever behold I. The queen also showed up no little honour. Mid-hall building holders, the highly famed queen, peace-eye of peoples, oft passed through the building, cheered the young troopers. She oft tended a hero, a beautiful ring band, ere she went to her sitting, Hrothgar's lovely daughter. Oft the daughter of Hrothgar, in view of the courtiers, to the earls at the end the ale-vessel carried, whom Freawaru I heard then hall-sitter's title, when nail-adorned jewels she gave to the heroes. She is betrothed to Ingeld in order to unite the Danes and Heathabards. gold-bedecked, youthful, to the glad son of Froda, her faith has been plighted. The friend of the Shieldings, the guard of the kingdom, hath given his sanction, and counts it advantage for a part of the quarrels, a portion of hatred, to pay with the woman. Somewhere, not rarely, when the ruler has fallen, the life-taking lance relaxeth its fury for a brief breathing spell, though the bride be charming. Chapter 30. Beowulf narrates his adventures to Higelac. It may well discomfit the prince of the Heathobards, and each of the thane men of earls that attend him, when he goes to the building escorting the woman that to noble-born Danemen the knights should be feasting. There gleam on his person the leavings of elders, hard and ring-bright, Heathobards' treasure, while they wielded their arms till they misled to the battle, their own dear lives and beloved companions. He saith at the banquet, who the collar beholdeth, an ancient ash warrior, who Erman's destruction clearly recalleth, cruel his spirit, sadly beginneth sounding the youthful thane champion's spirit through the thoughts of his bosom, war grief to waken, and this word answer speaketh. Ingeld is stirred up to break the truce. Art thou able, my friend, to know when thou seest it, the brand which thy father bare to the conflict in his latest adventure, neath visor of helmet, the dearly loved iron where Danemen did slay him, and brave mooded Shieldings on the fall of the heroes, when vengeance was sleeping, the slaughter-place wielded? E'en now, some man of the murderer's progeny, exulting in ornaments, enters the building, boasts of his blood-shedding, oft beareth the jewel which thou shouldst wholly hold in possession. So he urgeth and mindeth on every occasion, with woe-bringing words, till waxeth the season, when the woman's thane for the works of his father, the bill having bitten, blood gory sleepeth, fated to perish. The other one thenceward scapeth alive. The land knoweth thoroughly. Then the oaths of the earlmen on each side are broken, when rancours, unresting, are raging in Ingeld, and his wife-love waxeth less warm after sorrow. So the Heathobards favour, not faithful I reckon, their part in the treaty, not true to the Danemen. Their friendship not fast, I further shall tell thee. Having made these preliminary statements, I will now tell thee of Grendel, the monster. More about Grendel, that thou fully mayest hear, ornament giver, what afterward came from the hand-rush of heroes, when heaven's bright jewel o'er earth fields had glided. The stranger came raging, the horrible night-fiend, us for to visit, where wholly unharmed the hall we were guarding. Honskio fell first. To Honskio happened a hopeless contention. Death to the doomed one, dead he fell foremost, girded war champion. To him Grendel became then, to the vassal distinguished, a tooth-weaponed murderer, the well-beloved henchman's body all swallowed. Not the earlier off empty of hand did the bloody-toothed murderer, mindful of evils, wish to escape from the gold-giver's palace, but sturdy of strength he strove to outdo me. Hand-ready grappled. A glove was suspended, spacious and wondrous, in art fetters fastened, which was fashioned entirely by touch of the craftsman, from the dragon skin by the devil's devices. He, down in its depths, would do me unsadly, one among many, deed-doer raging. Though sinless he saw me, not so could it happen, when I in my anger upright did stand. 'Tis too long to recount how requital I furnished for every evil to the earlman's destroyer, a reflected honour upon my people. 'Twas there, my prince, that I proudly distinguished thy land with my labours. He left and retreated. He lived his life a little while longer, yet his right hand guarded his footstep in Heorot, and sad-mooted thence to the sea-bottom fell he, mournful in mind. For the might rush of battle, King Hrothgar lavished gifts upon me, the friend of the Shieldings, with gold that was plated, with ornaments many, much requited me. When daylight had dawned, and down to the banquet we had sat us together, there was chanting and joyance. The age-stricken Shielding asked many questions, and of old times related, oft like ringing harp-strings, joy-telling wood, were touched by the brave one. Now he uttered measures, mourning and truthful. Then the large-hearted Lang King, a legend of wonder, truthfully told us. now troubled with years. The old king is sad over the loss of his youthful vigour. The age-hoary warrior afterward began to mourn for the might that marked him in youth days. His breast within boiled, when burdened with winters much he remembered. From morning till night then, we joyed us therein as etiquette suffered, till the second night season came unto earth folk. Then early thereafter, the mother of Grendel's mother, was ready for vengeance. Wretched she journeyed. Her son had death ravished, the wrath of the Geatmen. The horrible woman avenged her offspring, and with mighty main strength murdered a hero. Asheru falls a prey to her vengeance. There, spirit of Asheru, aged adviser, was ready to vanish. Nor when morn had lightened, were they anywise suffered to consume him with fire. Folk of the Danemen, the death-weakened hero, nor the beloved liegeman to lay on the pyre. She suffered not his body to be burned, but ate it. She the corpse had off-carried in the clutch of the foeman, 'neath mountain brook's flood. To Hrothgar 'twas saddest of pains that ever had preyed on the chieftain. By the life of thee, the land prince, then me, besought very sadly, in sea currents' eddies, to display my prowess, to peril my safety, might deeds accomplish. Much did he promise. I sought the creature in her den. I found then the famous flood current's cruel, horrible depth warder. A while unto us two-hand was in common. The currents were seething, with gore that was clotted, and Grendel's fierce mother's, and hewed her head off. Head I off-hacked in the hole at the bottom, with huge reaching sword edge. Hardly I wrested my life from her clutches. Not doomed was I then. Jewels were freely bestowed upon me. But the warden of earlmen afterward gave me jewels in quantity, kinsman of Halfdenu. Chapter 31. Gift-giving is mutual. So the beloved land prince lived in decorum. I had missed no rewards, no meeds of my prowess, but he gave me jewels regarding my wishes. Halfdenu, his bairn, I'll bring them to thee, then. All my gifts I lay at thy feet. Atheling of earlmen, offer them gladly, and still unto thee is all my affection. But few of my folk-kin find I surviving. But thee, dear Hygelac, bade he in then to carry the boar image, banner, battle-high helmet, iron-grey armour, the excellent weapon. This armour I have belonged of yore to Hrothgar. In song measures said, this suit for the battle Hrothgar presented me, bade me expressly, wise-mooded Atheling, thereafter to tell thee the whole of its history, said King Hrothgar owned it. Dane prince for long, yet he wished not to give then the mail to his son, though dearly he loved him. Hereward the hardy, hold all in joyance. I heard that there followed hard on the jewels 2 braces of stallions of striking resemblance, dappled and yellow. He granted him usance of horses and treasures, so a kinsman should bear him, no web of treachery weave for another, nor by cunning craftiness cause the destruction. Hygelac loves his nephew Beowulf, of trusty companion. Most precious to Hygelac, the bold one in battle, was the bairn of his sister, and each unto other mindful of favours. Beowulf gives Hygd the necklace that Walchtheo had given him. I am told that to Hygd he proffered the necklace, wonder gem rare that Walchtheo gave him. The troop leader's daughter, a trio of horses, slender and saddle bright, soon did the jewel embellish her bosom when the bear feast was over. So Ecgtheow's bairn brave did prove him. Beowulf is famous, war-famous man, by deeds that were valiant. He lived in honour, beloved companions, slew not carousing, his mood was not cruel, but by hand strength hugest of heroes then living. The brave one retained the bountiful gift the Lord had allowed him. Long was he wretched, so that sons of the Geatmen accounted him worthless, and the lord of the liegemen Loth was to do him mickle of honour. When mead cups were passing, they fully believed him idle and sluggish. He is requited for the slights suffered in earlier days. An indolent Atheling, to the honour-blessed man there came requital for the cuts he had suffered. The folk troops' defender bade fetch to the building the heirloom of Hrethel, embellished with gold. Hygelac overwhelms the conqueror with gifts, so the brave one enjoined it. There was jewel no richer in the form of a weapon among the Geats of that era. In Beowulf's keeping he placed it, and gave him 7 of thousands, manor and lordship. Common to both was land among the people, estate and inherited rights and possessions. To the second one, specially spacious dominions. To the one who was better, it afterward happened in days that followed, befell the battle thanes. After Hardred's death, Beowulf becomes king. After Hygelac's death, and when Hardred was murdered with weapons of warfare neath well-covered targets, when valiant battlemen in victor band sought him, war-shilfing heroes harassed the nephew of Hereric in battle. To Beowulf's keeping turned there in time extensive dominions. He rules the Geats 50 years. He fittingly ruled them a 50 of winters. He, a man-ruler wise, was, man-o'-ward old, till a certain one gan, on gloom-darkening nights, a dragon, the fire-drake, to govern who guarded a treasure, a high-rising stone cliff, on heath that was greyish. A path neath it lay, unknown unto mortals. Some one of earth-men entered the mountain, the heathenish horde laid hold of with ardour. Chapter 32. The Horde and the Dragon. He sought of himself who sorely did harm him, but for need very pressing, the servant of one of the sons of the heroes hate blows evaded, seeking for shelter, and the sin-driven warrior took refuge within there. He early looked in it when the onset surprised him, the Horde. He, a gem vessel, saw there many of such like ancient ornaments in the earth cave were lying, as in days of yore, some one of men of illustrious lineage, as a legacy monstrous, there had secreted them, careful and thoughtful. Dear valued jewels, death had oft snatched them in the days of the past, and the one man, moreover, of the flower of the folk, who fared there the longest, was fain to defer it, friend mourning warder, a little longer to be left in enjoyment of long-lasting treasure. A barrow already stood on the plain, the stream currents nigh to, new by the Ness edge, and neath of approaching. The keeper of rings carried within a ponderous deal of the treasure of nobles. Of gold that was beaten, briefly he spake then. The ring-giver bewails the loss of retainers. Hold thou, O earth, now heroes no more may, the earnings of earlmen. Lo, erst in thy bosom worthy men won them. War-death hath ravished, perilous life-bale, all my warriors, liegemen beloved, who this life have forsaken, who all pleasures saw. No sword-bearer have I, and no one to burnish the gold-plated vessel. The high-valued beaker, my heroes are vanished. The hardy helmet, behung with gilding, shall be reaved of its riches. The ring-cleansers slumber, who were charged to have ready visors for battle. And the byrnie, that bided in battle encounter or a breaking of war-shields, the bite of the edges, moulds with the hero. The ring-twisted armour, its lord being lifeless, no longer may journey hanging by heroes. Harp-joy is vanished, the rapture of glee-wood. No excellent falcon swoops through the building, no swift-footed charger grindeth the gravel. A grievous destruction no few of the world-folk widely hath scattered. So, woeful of spirit, one after all lamented mournfully, moaning in sadness by day and by night, till death, with its bellows, the fire-dragon, dashed on his spirit. Then the ancient dusk-scather found the great treasure standing all open. He who flaming and fiery flies to the barrows, naked war-dragon, nightly escapeth encompassed with fire. Men under heaven widely beheld him. 'Tis sad that he looks for the hoard in the earth, where old he is guarding the heathenish treasure. He'll be nowise the better. The dragon meets his match. So 300 winters the waster of peoples held upon earth that excellent hoard hall, till the forementioned earlman angered him bitterly. The beat-plated beaker he bare to his chieftain, and fullest remission for all his remissness begged of his liege lord. Then the hoard was discovered, the treasure was taken, his petition was granted. The hero plunders the dragon's den. The lorn-mooded liegeman, his lord regarded the old work of earth folk, 'twas the earliest occasion, When the dragon awoke, the strife was renewed there. He snuffed along the stone then. Stout-hearted found he the footprint of foeman. Too far had he gone with cunning craftiness, close to the head of the fire-spewing dragon. So undoomed he may scape from anguish and exile with ease who possesseth the favour of heaven. The hoard-warden eagerly searched o'er the ground then, would meet with the person that caused him sorrow while in slumber reclining. Gleaming and wild, he oft went round the cavern, all of it outward. Not any of earthmen was seen in that desert. Yet he joyed in the battle, rejoiced in the conflict. Oft he turned to the barrow, sought for the gem cup. This he soon perceived then. The dragon perceives that someone has disturbed his treasure, that some man or other had discovered the gold, the famous folk treasure. Not fain did the hoard ward wait until evening. Then the ward of the barrow was angry in spirit. The loathed one wished to pay for the dear-valued drink cup with fire. Then the day was done as the dragon would have it. He no longer would wait on the wall, but departed. The dragon is infuriated. Fire-impelled, flaming, fearful the start was to earls in the land, as it early thereafter to their giver of gold was grievously ended. Chapter 33. Brave though aged. Reminiscences. The dragon spits fire. The stranger began then to vomit forth fire, to burn the great manor. The blaze then glimmered for anguish to earlmen. Not anything living was the hateful air-goer willing to leave there. The war of the worm widely was noticed, the feud of the foemen afar and anear. How the enemy injured the earls of the Geatmen, harried with hatred, back he hied to the treasure, to the well-hidden cavern ere the coming of daylight. He had circled with fire the folk of those regions with brand and burning. In the barrow he trusted, in the wall and his war might. The weaning deceived him. Beowulf hears of the havoc wrought by the dragon. Then straight was the horror to Beowulf published. Early, forsooth, that his own native homestead, the best of buildings, was burning and melting. Gift seat of Geatman, 'twas a grief to the spirit of the good-mooded hero, the greatest of sorrows. He fears that heaven is punishing him for some crime. The wise one weened then that, wielding his kingdom gainst the ancient commandments, he had bitterly angered the Lord everlasting. With lorn meditations his bosom welled inward, as was nowise his custom. The fire-spewing dragon fully had wasted the fastness of warriors, the waterland outward, the manor with fire. The folk-ruling hero, prince of the waders, the planning to wreak him, the warman's defender, bade them to make him earlman's atheling, an excellent war-shield. He orders an iron shield to be made from him. Wood is useless. Wholly of iron, fully he knew them, that wood from the forest was helpless to aid him, shield against fire. The long-worthy ruler must live the last of his limited earth days, of life in the world, and the worm along with him. Though he long had been holding hoard wealth in plenty, he determines to fight alone. Then the ring-prince disdained to seek with a war-band, with army extensive, the air-going ranger. He felt no fear of the foeman's assaults, and he counted for little the might of the dragon, his power and prowess. For previously dared he Beowulf's early triumphs referred to. A heap of hostility, haphazard dangers. War thane when Hrothgar's palace he cleansed, conquering combatant, clutched in the battle the kinsman of Grendel, of kindred detested. Higelac's death recalled. 'Twas of hand-fights, not least where Higelac was slaughtered, when the king of the Geatmen, with clashings of battle, friend-lord of folks in Frisian dominions, offspring of Hrethrael, perished through sword-drink, with battle-swords beaten. Thence Beowulf came then, on self-help relying, swam through the waters. He bare on his arm, lone-going, 30 outfits of armour, when the ocean he mounted. The Hetwars by no means had need to be boastful of their fighting afoot, who forward to meet him carried their war-shields. Not many returned from the brave-mooded battle-night back to their homesteads. Edgetheow's bairn o'er the bight courses swam then, lone goer, lorn to his landfolk returning. where Hygd to him tendered treasure and kingdom, Heardred's lack of capacity to rule, rings and dominion. Her son she not trusted to be able to keep the kingdom devised him gainst alien races on the death of King Hygelac. Beowulf's tact and delicacy recalled. Yet the sad ones succeeded not in persuading the Atheling in any way ever to act as a suzerain to Heardred or promise to govern the kingdom. Yet with friendly counsel in the folk he sustained him, gracious with honour till he grew to be older. Reference is here made to a visit which Beowulf receives from Enmund and Edgils. Why they come is not known. Wielded the waders, wide-fleeing outlaws. Othera's sons sought him o'er the waters. They had stirred a revolt against the helm of the Scylfings, the best of the sea kings who in Swedish dominions distributed treasure, distinguished folk leader. 'Twas the end of his earth days. Injury fatal by swing of the sword he received as a greeting. Offspring of Hygelac, Ongentheow's bairn, later departed to visit his homestead. When Heardred was dead, let Beowulf rule them, govern the Geatmen. Good was that folk king. Chapter 34. Beowulf seeks the dragon. Beowulf's reminiscences. He planned requital for the folk leader's ruin in days thereafter. To Eadgils, the wretched becoming an enemy. Ocheru's son then went with a war troop o'er the wide-stretching currents, with warriors and weapons, with woe journeys cold he, after avenged him. The king's life he took. Beowulf has been preserved through many perils. So he came off uninjured from all of his battles, perilous fights, offspring of Ecgtheow, from his deeds of daring, till that day most momentous, when he, fate-driven, fared to fight with the dragon. With 11 comrades he seeks the dragon. With 11 companions, the prince of the Geatmen went lowering with fury to look at the fire drake. Inquiring he'd found how the feud had arisen. Hate to his heroes, the highly famed gem vessel was brought to his keeping through the hand of the informer. A guide leads the way, but that in the strong was 13th of heroes, that caused the beginning of conflict so bitter, captive and wretched, must sad-mooded thenceward, very reluctantly, point out the place he passed then unwillingly to the spot where he knew of the notable cavern, the cave under earth, not far from the ocean, the anger of eddies, which inward was full of jewels and wires. A warden uncanny, warrior-weaponed, warded the treasure, old under earth, no easy possession for any of earth folk access to get to. Then the battle-brave Atheling sat on the nay's edge, while the gold friend of Geatmen, gracious, saluted his fireside companions. Woe was his spirit, death boding, wavering, weird very near him, who must seize the old hero, his soul treasure look for, dragging aloof his life from his body. Not flesh-hidden long was the folk leader's spirit. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son. Beowulf's retrospect. I survived in my youth days many a conflict, hours of onset. At all I remember, I was 7 winters old when the jewelled prince took me, high lord of heroes, at the hands of my father. Hrethel, the hero king, had me in keeping. Hrethel took me when I was 7, gave me treasure and feasting, our kinship remembered, nor was I any less dear to him. He treated me as a son. Knight in the boroughs, than the bairns of his household, Herobald, Hathkin, and Hygelac mine. To the eldest, unjustly, by axe of a kinsman, was murder bed strewn. Since him from Hathkin, horn bow, one of the brothers accidentally kills another. His sheltering chieftain shot with an arrow, erred in his aim, and injured his kinsman. One brother, the other, with blood-sprinkled spear. No fee could compound for such a calamity. 'Twas a fearless night, finished in malice, sad to his spirit. The folk prince, however, had to part from existence with vengeance untaken. A parallel case is supposed. So to hoar-headed hero 'tis heavily crushing to live to see his son as he rideth, young on the gallows. Then measures he chanteth a song of sorrow, when his son is hanging for the raven's delight. And aged and hoary, he is unable to offer any assistance. Every morning his offspring's departure is constant recalled. He dares not to wait for the birth of an heir in his borough enclosures. Since that one through death pain the deeds hath experienced, he heart-grieved beholds in the house of his son the wine-building wasted, the wind lodging places reaved of their roaring. The riders are sleeping, the knights in the grave. There's no sound of the harp-wood, joy in the yards, as of yore were familiar. Chapter 35. Reminiscences, continued. Beowulf's last battle. He seeks then his chamber, singeth a woe-song one for the other. All too extensive seemed homesteads and plains. So the helm of the waders, Hrethel grieves for Heribald. Mindful of Heribald, heart sorrow carried, stirred with emotion, no wise was able to wreak his ruin on the ruthless destroyer. He was unable to follow the warrior with hatred, with deeds that were direful, though dear he not held him. Then pressed by the pang this pain occasioned him, he gave up glee, God-light elected. He left to his sons, as the man that is rich does, his land and fortress, when from life he departed. Strife between Swedes and Geats. Then was crime and hostility twixt Swedes and Geat men. O'er wide-stretching water warring was mutual, burdensome hatred when Hrethel had perished, and Ongentheow's offspring were active and valiant, wished not to hold to peace overseas, but round Rheos Nuberg often accomplished cruellest massacre. This my kinsman avenged, the feud and fury, as 'tis found on inquiry, though one of them paid it with forfeit of life joys. Hathkin's fall at Ravenswood. With price that was hard, the struggle became then fatal to Hathkin, lord of the Geatmen. Then I heard that at morning one brother the other with edges of irons egged on to murder. Where Ongentheow maketh onset on Eofor, the helmet crashed, the hoary hair chilfing, sword smitten fell. His hand then remembered feud hate sufficient, refused not the death blow. I requited him for the jewels he gave me. The gems that he gave me, with jewel-bright sword I quitted in contest, as occasion was offered. Lord, he allowed me life joy at homestead, manor to live on. Little he needed from Gepids or Danes or in Sweden to look for, trooper less true with treasure to buy him. 'Mong foot soldiers ever in front I would hie me. Alone in the vanguard and evermore gladly warfare shall wage, while this weapon endureth. But late and early often did serve me. Beowulf refers to his having slain Dehreven, where I proved before heroes the slayer of Dehreven, knight of the Hugmen. He by no means was suffered to the king of the Frisians to carry the jewels, the breast decoration, but the banner possessor bowed in the battle, brave-mooded Atheling. No weapon was slayer, but war grapple broke then the surge of his spirit, his body destroying. Now shall weapon's edge make war for the treasure, and hand and firm sword. Beowulf spake then, boast words uttered the latest occasion. He boasts of his youthful prowess, and declares himself still fearless. I braved in my youth days battles unnumbered, still am I willing the struggle to look for, vain deeds perform, folk warden prudent. If the hateful despoiler forth from his cavern seeketh me out, each of the heroes, helm-bearers sturdy, he thereupon greeted his last salutations. Beloved co-liegeman, his last salutation. No brand would I bear, no blade for the dragon. Wist I away my word boast accomplish. Else with the monster, as with Grendel, I did it. But fire in the battle, hot I expect there, furious flame burning. So I fixed on my body target and war mail. The ward of the barrow, I'll not flee from a foot length, the foeman uncanny. At the wall 'twill befall us as fate decreeth. Let fate decide between us. Each one's creator. I am eager in spirit, with the winged war hero, to away with all boasting. Bide on the barrow, with Burnies protected. Wait ye here till the battle is over. Earls in armour, which of us two may better bear his disaster when the battle is over. 'Tis no matter of yours, and men cannot do it, but me and me only, to measure his strength with the monster of malice, might deeds to accomplish. I with prowess shall gain the gold, or the battle, dire death, woe will drag off your ruler. The mighty champion rose by his shield then, brave and a helmet in battle mail went he, 'neath steep rising stone cliffs, the strength he relied on, of one man alone, no work for a coward. Then he saw by the wall who a great many battles had lived through, most worthy when foot troops collided. The place of strife is described. Stone arches standing, stout-hearted champion, saw a brook from the barrow bubbling out thenceward. The flood of the fountain was fuming with war flame, not nigh to the hoard, for season the briefest could he brave, without burning, the abyss that was yawning. The drake was so fiery, the prince of the waders, caused then that words came from his bosom. So fierce was his fury, the firm-hearted shouted, his battle-clear voice came in resounding, 'neath the grey-coloured stone. Stirred was his hatred. Beowulf calls out under the stone arches. The hoard ward distinguished the speech of a man. Time was no longer to look out for friendship. The breath of the monster issued forth first, vapoury war sweat, out of the stone cave, with the terrible encounter. The earth re-echoed. The earl, 'neath the barrow, lifted his shield, lord of the Geatmen, toward the terrible stranger. The ring-twisted creature's heart was then ready to seek for a struggle. Beowulf brandishes his sword. The excellent battle-king first brandished his weapon, the ancient heirloom of edges unblunted, to the death-planners twain was terror from other, and stands against his shield. The lord of the troopers intrepidly stood then gainst his high-rising shield, when the dragon coiled him. The dragon coils himself. Quickly together, in corslet he bided. He went then in blazes, bending and striding, hasting him forward, his life and body, the targe well protected, for time period shorter than wish demanded for the well-renowned leader, where he then, for the first day, was forced to be victor, famous in battle, as fate had not willed it. The lord of the Geatmen uplifted his hand then, smiting the fire-drake with sword that was precious, that bright on the bone the blade edge did weaken, bit more feebly than his folk leader needed, burdened with bale griefs. Then the barrow protector, the dragon rages, when the sword blow had fallen, was fierce in his spirit. Flinging his fires, flamings of battle gleamed then afar. The gold friend of waders, Beowulf's sword fails him. Boasted no conquests, his battle sword failed him naked in conflict, as by no means it ought to, long trusty weapon. 'Twas no slight undertaking, that Ecgtheow's famous offspring would leave the Drake cavern's bottom. He must live in some region other than this, by the will of the dragon, as each one of earth-men existence must forfeit. 'Twas early thereafter the excellent warriors, the combat is renewed, met with each other anew and afresh. The hoard ward took heart, gasps heaved then his bosom. The great hero is reduced to extremities. Sorrow he suffered, encircled with fire, who the people erst governed. His companions by no means were banded about him, bands of the princes. His comrades flee with valorous spirit, but they sped to the forest, seeking for safety. The soul deeps of one were, blood is thicker than water. Ruffled by care, kin-love can never aught in him waver, who well doth consider. Chapter 36. Wiglaf the Trusty. Beowulf is deserted by friends and by sword. Wiglaf remains true, the ideal Teutonic liegeman. The son of Wechstan was Wiglaf entitled, shield warrior, precious, prince of the Shieldings. Alferu's kinsman, he saw his dear liege lord, enduring the heat neath helmet and visor. Then he minded the holding that erst he had given him. Wiglaf recalls Beowulf's generosity. The Wegmunding warrior's wealth blessed homestead, each of the folk rights his father had wielded. He was hot for the battle. His hand seized the target, the yellow bark shield. He unsheathed his old weapon, which was known among earthmen as the relic of Eanmund, Ochheru's offspring, whom, exiled and friendless, Wechstan did slay with sword edge in battle, and carried his kinsman the clear shining helmet, the ring-made byrnie, the old giant weapon that Unela gave him, his boon fellow's armour, ready war trappings. He the feud did not mention, though he'd fatally smitten the son of his brother. Many a half-year held he the treasures, the bill and the byrnie, till his bairn became able, like his father before him, famed deeds to accomplish. Then he gave him, 'mong Geatmen, a goodly array of weeds for his warfare. He went from life then, old on his journey. 'Twas the earliest time then, this is Wiglaf's first battle as liegeman of Beowulf, that the youthful champion might charge in the battle, aiding his liege lord. His spirit was dauntless, nor did kinsman's bequest quail at the battle. This the dragon discovered on their coming together. Wiglaf uttered many a right saying, said to his fellows, sad was his spirit. Wiglaf appeals to the pride of the cowards. I remember the time when, tasting the mead cup, we promised in the hall the lord of us all, who gave us these ring treasures, to this battle equipment, swords and helmets, we'd certainly quite him, should need of such aid ever befall him. How we have forfeited our liege lord's confidence. In the war band he chose us for this journey spontaneously, stirred us to glory, and gave me these jewels, since he held and esteemed us trustworthy spearmen. Hardy helm-bearers, though this hero achievement our Lord intended alone to accomplish, ward of his people for most of achievements, doings audacious, he did among earth-folk. Our Lord is in sore need of us. The day is now come when the ruler of earthmen needeth the vigour of valiant heroes. Let us wend us towards him, the war prince to succour, while the heat yet rageth, horrible firefight. I would rather die than go home without my caesurin. God, what in me, 'tis mickle the liefer. The blaze should embrace my body and eat it with my treasure bestower. Meseemeth not proper to bear our battle shields back to our country, lest first we are able to fell and destroy the long-hating foeman to defend the life of... Surely he does not deserve to die alone. The prince of the waders, well do I know 'tisn't earned by his exploits. He only of Geatmen, sorrow should suffer, sink in the battle. Brand and helmet to us both shall be common, shield cover, byrnie. Through the bale smoke he stalked then, went under helmet to the help of his chieftain. Wiglaf reminds Beowulf of his youthful boasts, briefly discoursing. Beowulf, dear, perform thou all fully, as thou formerly saidst in thy youthful years, that while yet thou livedst, thou wouldst let thine honour not ever be lessened. Thy life thou shalt save, mighty in actions, atheling undaunted, with all of thy vigour. The monster advances on them. I'll give thee assistance. The dragon came raging, wild, mooded stranger, when these words had been uttered. 'Twas the second occasion, seeking his enemies, men that were hated with hot gleaming fire waves. With blaze billows burned the board to its edges. The flight armour failed them to furnish assistance to the youthful spear hero, but the young aged stripling quickly advanced beneath his kinsman's war target, since his own had been ground in the grip of the fire. Beowulf strikes at the dragon. Then the warrior king was careful of glory. He soundly smote with sword for the battle, that it stood in the head by hatred driven. Nailing was shivered, the old and iron made. His sword fails him. Brand of Beowulf in battle deceived him. 'Twas denied him that edges of irons were able to help in the battle. The hand was too mighty, which every weapon, as I heard on inquiry, outstruck in its stroke. When to struggle he carried the wonderful war sword. It waxed him no better. The dragon advances on Beowulf again. Then the people despoiler, third of his onsets, fierce raging fire drake of feud hate was mindful, charged on the strong one, when chance was afforded, heated and war grim, seized on his neck, with teeth that were bitter. He bloodied in wax, with soul gore seething, sword blood in waves boiled. Chapter 37. The Fatal Struggle. Beowulf's Last Moments. Wiglaf defends Beowulf. Then I heard that, at need of the king of the people, the upstanding earlman exhibited prowess, vigour and courage, as suited his nature. He his head did not guard, but the high-minded liegeman's hand was consumed when he succoured his kinsman. So he struck the strife-bringing strange-comer lower, earl thane in armour, that in went the weapon, gleaming and plated, that gan then the fire. Beowulf draws his knife, later to lessen. The liege lord himself then retained his consciousness, brandished his war knife, battle-sharp, bitter, that he bare on his armour, and cuts the dragon. The wader lord cut the worm in the middle. They had felled the enemy, life drove out then, puissant prowess. The pair had destroyed him. Land chiefs related, so a liegeman should prove him a thaneman when needed. To the prince 'twas the last of his era of conquest by his own great achievements. Beowulf's wound swells and burns. The latest of world deeds, the wound then began which the earth-dwelling dragon erstwhile had wrought him to burn and to swell. He soon then discovered that bitterest bale woe in his bosom was raging, poison within. The atheling advanced then, he sits down exhausted, that along by the wall he, prudent of spirit, might sit on a settle. He saw the giant work, how arches of stone strengthened with pillars, the earth-hall eternal inward supported. Then the long-worthy liegeman laved with his hand the far-famous chieftain. Wiglaf bathes his lord's head, gory from sword-edge, refreshing the face of his friend lord and ruler, sated with battle, unbinding his helmet. Beowulf answered, of his injury spake he, his wound that was fatal. He was fully aware he had lived his allotted life days, enjoying the pleasures of earth. Then past was entirely his measure of days, death very near. Beowulf regrets that he has no son. My son, I would give now my battle equipments, had any of heirs been after me granted, along of my body. This people I governed 50 of winters. No king among my neighbours dared to encounter me with comrades in battle, try me with terror. The time to me ordered I bided at home. Mine own, kept fitly, sought me no snares, swore me not many. I can rejoice in a well-spent life. Oaths in injustice, joy over all this, I'm able to have, though ill with my death wounds. Hence the ruler of earthmen need not charge me with the killing of kinsmen. When cometh my life out forth from my body, fare thou with haste now. Bring me the hoard, Wiglaf. Bring me the hoard, Wiglaf, that my dying eyes may be refreshed by a sight of it. To behold the hoard neath the hoar greyish stone. Well-loved Wiglaf, now the warm as a lying, sore wounded sleepeth, deceased of his treasure. Go thou in haste, that treasures of old I, gold wealth, my gaze on. Together see lying the ether bright jewels be easier able, having the heap of hoard gems to yield my life, and the land folk whom long I have governed. Chapter 38. Wiglaf plunders the dragon's den. Beowulf's death. Wiglaf fulfils his lord's behest. Then I heard that Wehstan's son very quickly, these words being uttered, heeded his liege lord, wounded and war-sick, went in his armour, his well-woven ring-mail, neath the roof of the barrow. Then the trusty retainer treasure gems many victorious saw, the dragon's den. When the seat he came near to, gold treasure sparkling, spread on the bottom, wonder on the wall, and the worm creature's cavern. The ancient dawn flyers, vessels are standing, cups of the ancients of cleansers bereaved, robbed of their ornaments. There were helmets in numbers, old and rust-eaten, arm bracelets many, artfully woven. Wealth can easily, gold on the sea bottom, turn into vanity. Each one of earthmen arm him who pleaseth, and he saw there lying an all-golden banner high o'er the hoard of Han-wonders greatest. Linked with lacets, a light from it sparkled. At the floor of the cavern he was able to look on. The dragon is not there. To examine the jewels, sight of the dragon not any was offered, but edge off carried him. Wiglaf bears the hoard away. Then I heard that the hero, the hoard treasure plundered, the giant work ancient, reeved in the cavern, bare on his bosom the beakers and platters, as himself would fain have it, and took off the standard, the brightest of beacons. The bill had erst injured, its edge was of iron, the old ruler's weapon, him who long had watched as ward of the jewels, who fire-terror carried hot for the treasure, rolling in battle, in middlemost darkness, till murder he perished. The messenger hastened, not loth to return, hurried by jewels. Curiosity urged him if, excellent-mooded, alive he should find the lord of the waders mortally wounded, at the place where he left him. Mid the jewels he found then the famous old chieftain, his liege lord beloved, at his life's end gory. He thereupon gan to lave him with water, till the point of his word pierced his breast-hoard. Beowulf spake, the gold gems he noticed. Beowulf is rejoiced to see the jewels. The old one in sorrow, for the jewels I look on, thanks do I utter for all to the ruler, wielder of worship, with words of devotion, the Lord everlasting, that he let me such treasures gain for my people, ere death overtook me. Since I've bartered the aged life to me granted for treasure of jewels, attend ye henceforward. He desires to be held in memory by his people. The wants of the war-thanes, I can wait here no longer. The battle famed bid ye to build them a grave hill, bright when I'm burned, at the brim current's limit, as a memory mark to the men I have governed. Aloft it shall tower on Whale's Ness uprising, that earls of the ocean hereafter may call it Beowulf's Barrow. Those who barks ever dashing from a distance shall drive o'er the darkness of waters. The hero's last gift. The bold-mooded troop-lord took from his neck then the ring that was golden, gave to his liegeman, the youthful war-hero, his gold-flashing helmet, his collar and war-mail, bade him well to enjoy them, and last words. Thou art latest left of the line of our kindred, of Waegmunding people. Weird hath oft carried all of my kinsmen to the Creator's glory. Earls in their vigour, I shall after them fare. 'Twas the aged liege lord's last spoken word in his musings of spirit, ere he mounted the fire. The battle waves burning, from his bosom departed, his soul to seek the sainted one's glory. Chapter 39. The Dead Foes, Wiglaf's Bitter Taunts. Wiglaf is sorely grieved to see his lord look so unwarlike. It had woefully chanced that the youthful retainer, to behold on earth the most ardent beloved at his life-day's limit, lying there helpless. The slayer too lay there, of life full bereaved, horrible earth-drake, harassed with sorrow. The dragon has plundered his last hoard. The round-twisted monster was permitted no longer to govern the ring-hordes, but edges of war-swords mightily seized him, battle-sharp, sturdy leavings of hammers, that still from his wounds the flyer from far land fell to the earth, hard by his hoard-house. Hopped he at midnight, not ere through the air, nor exulting in duels, suffered them to see him, but he sank then to earthward, through the hero-chief's handwork. I heard, sure it throve then, few warriors dared to face the monster, but few in the land of liegemen of valour, though of every achievement bold he had proved him, to run gainst the breath of the venomous scather, or the haul of the treasure, to trouble with hand-blows. If he, watching, had found the ward of the hoard hall, on the barrow abiding, Beowulf's part of the treasure of jewels was paid for with death. Each of the twain had attained to the end of life so unlasting. Not long was the time till the cowardly thanes come out of the thicket. The tardy at battle returned from the thicket, the timid truce-breakers 10 altogether, who durst not before play with the lances in the prince of the people's pressing emergency. They are ashamed of their desertion, but blushing with shame, with shields they betook them, with arms and armour where the old one was lying. They gazed upon Wiglaf. He was sitting exhausted, foot-going fighter not far from the shoulders of the lord of the people, would rouse him with water. No whit did it help him, though he hoped for it keenly. He was able on earth not at all in the leader life to retain, and nowise to alter the will of the wielder. The world-ruler's power would govern the actions of each one of heroes. Wiglaf is ready to excoriate them. As yet he is doing, from the young one, forthwith then, could grim-worded greeting be got for him quickly, whose courage had failed him. Wiglaf discoursed then, Wehstan, his son, sad-mooded hero, he begins to taunt them, looked on the hated. He, whose soothness will utter, can say that the liege lord who gave you the jewels, the ornament armour wherein ye are standing, when on ale-bench often he offered to Hallman helmet and byrnie, the prince to his liegeman, as best upon earth he was able to find him. Surely our lord wasted his armour on poltroons. that he wildly wasted his war gear undoubtedly when battle o'ertook him. The troop king no need had to glory in comrades, yet God permitted him. He, however, got along without you. Victory wielder, with weapon unaided, himself to avenge when vigour was needed. I life protection but little was able to give him in battle, and I gan notwithstanding. With some aid I could have saved our liege lord. Helping my kinsman, my strength overtaxing, he waxed the weaker when with weapon I smote on my mortal opponent, the fire less strongly framed from his bosom. Too few of protectors came round the king at the critical moment. Gift-giving is over with your people, the ring-lord is dead. Now must ornament-taking and weapon-bestowing, home joyance all, cease for your kindred. Food for the people, each of your warriors, must needs be bereaved of rights that he holdeth in landed possessions, when faraway nobles shall learn of your leaving your lord so basely. What is life without honour? The dastardly deed. Death is more pleasant to every earlman than infamous life is. Chapter 40. The Messenger of Death. Wiglaf sends the news of Beowulf's death to liegemen nearby. Then he charged the battle be announced at the hedge up o'er the cliff edge, where the earl troopers bided the whole of the morning. Mood wretched sat them, bearers of battle shields, both things expecting the end of his lifetime and the coming again of the liege lord beloved. Little reserved he of news that was known, who the Ness cliff did travel, but he truly discoursed to all that could hear him. The messenger speaks. Now the free-giving friend-lord of the folk of the Waders, the folk-prince of Geatmen, is fast in his deathbed. By the deeds of the dragon in deathbed abideth. Along with him lieth his life-taking foeman slain with knife wounds. He was wholly unable to injure at all the ill-planning monster. Wiglaf sits by our dead lord. With bite of his sword edge, Wiglaf is sitting, offspring of Wihstan, up over Beowulf, earl or another whose end day hath reached him. Head watch holdeth o'er heroes unliving. Our lord's death will lead to attacks from our old foes. For friend and for foeman, the folk now expecteth a season of strife, when the death of the folk king to Frankmen and Frisians in far lands is published. The war-hatred waxed warm against the Hugman, Hygelac's death recalled. When Hygelac came with an army of vessels, faring to Friesland where the Frankmen in battle humbled him, and bravely with overnight accomplished that the mail-clad warrior must sink in the battle, fell mid his folk troop. No fretgems presented the atheling to earlmen. I was denied us Merowing's mercy. The men of the Swedelands, for truce or for truth trust I but little. But widely 'twas known that near Ravenswood on Genthiau, Hathkin's fall referred to, sundered Hathkin the Hrethling from life joys, and for pride overweening the war-shilfings first did seek the Geatman with savage intentions. Early did Other's age-laden father, old and terrible, give blow in requital, killing the sea-king. The queen-mother rescued the old one, his consort, deprived of her gold, Onela's mother, and Ocher-Uz also. And then followed the feud-nursing foemen till hardly reaved of their ruler, they Ravenswood entered. Then with vast numbered forces he assaulted the remnant. Weary with wounds, woe often promised the livelong night to the sad-hearted war-troop. Said he at morning would kill them with edges of weapons, some on the gallows for glee to the fowls. Aid came after to the anxious in spirit. At dawn of the day, after Hygelac's bugle and trumpet sound heard they, when the good one proceeded, and faring followed the flower of the troopers. Chapter 41. The Messenger's Retrospect. The messenger continues and refers to the feuds of Swedes and Geats. The blood-stained trace of Swedes and Geatmen, the death-rush of warmen, widely was noticed, how the folks with each other feud did awaken. The worthy one went then with well-beloved comrades, old and dejected, to go to the fastness. On Genthiau earl upward then turned him, Of Higelac battle he'd heard on inquiry, the exultant one's prowess, despaired of resistance, with earls of the ocean to be able to struggle, 'gainst sea-going sailors, to save the hoard treasure. His wife and his children he fled from thenceward, old 'neath the earth wall, then was offered pursuance to the braves of the Swedemen, the banner to Higelac. They fared then forth o'er the field of protection, when the Hrethling heroes hedgeward had thronged them. Then with edges of irons was Ongentheow driven, the grey-haired to tarry, that the troop ruler had to suffer the power solely of Eofor. Wulf sounds Ongentheow. Wulf then wildly with weapon assaulted him, wondered his son, that for swinge of the edges, that blood from his body burst out in currents, forth 'neath his hair. He feared not, however, grey-headed Shilfing, but speedily quieted the wasting wound-stroke with worse exchange. Ongentheow gives a stout blow in return. When the king of the Thane group thither did turn him, the wise-mooded son of Wonred was powerless to give a return blow to the age-hoary man, but his head-shielding helmet first hewed he to pieces, that flecked with gore before he did totter, fell to the earth. Not fey was he yet then, but up did he spring, though an edge-wound had reached him. Eofor smites Ongentheow fiercely. Then Higelac's vassal, valiant and dauntless, when his brother lay dead, made his broad-bladed weapon, giant sword ancient, defence of the giants, bound o'er the shield wall. The folk prince succumb then. Ongentheow is slain. Shepherd of people was pierced to the vitals. There were many attendants who bound up his kinsman, carried him quickly when occasion was granted. At the place of the slain they were suffered to manage this pending. One hero plundered the other, his armour of iron from Ongentheow ravished, his hard sword hilted and helmet together. Eofor takes the old king's war gear to Higelac. The old one's equipments he carried to Higelac. He the jewels received, and rewards mid the troopers graciously promised, and so did accomplish. The king of the Waders requited the war-rush, Hrethel's descendant, when home he repaired him. Higelac rewards the brothers. To Eofor and Wulf with wide lavished treasures, to each of them granted 100,000 in land and rings wrought of wire. His gifts were beyond cavil. None upon mid-earth needed to twit him with the gifts he gave them, when glory they conquered. To Eofor he also gives his only daughter in marriage. And to Eofor then gave he his one only daughter, the honour of home, as an earnest of favour. That's the feud and hatred, as we night will happen, the anger of earthmen that earls of the Swedemen will visit on us, when they hear that our leader lifeless is lying, he who long time protected his hoard and kingdom gainst hating assailers, who on the fall of the heroes defended of yore, the deed mighty shieldings, did for the troopers what best did avail them, and further moreover, it is time for us to pay the last marks of respect to our Lord. Hero deeds accomplished. Now is haste most fitting that the Lord of Liegemen we look upon yonder, and that one carry on journey to death pyre, who ring presents gave us. Not aught of it all shall melt with the brave one. There's a mass of bright jewels, gold beyond measure, gruesomely purchased, and ending it all, ornament rings too, bought with his life. These fire shall devour, flame shall cover, no earlman shall wear a jewel memento, nor beautiful virgin have on her neck rings to adorn her. But wretched in spirit, bereaved of gold gems, she shall oft with others be exiled and banished, since the leader of liegemen hath laughter forsaken, mirth and merriment. Hence many a war spear, cold from the morning, shall be clutched and the fingers heaved in the hand. No harp music sound shall waken the warriors, but the wan-coated raven, fain over fey ones freely shall gabble, shall say to the eagle how he sped in the eating, when the wolf, his companion, he plundered the slain. So the high-minded hero was rehearsing these stories, loathsome to hear. He lied as to few of the warriors go sadly to look at Beowulf's lifeless body. Weirds and of words, all the war troop arose then, neath the eagle's cape sadly betook them, weeping and woeful, the wonder to look at. They saw on the sand then soulless a-lying, his slaughter-bed holding, him who rings had given them in days that were done. Then the death-bringing moment was come to the good one, that the king, very warlike, wielder of waders, with wonder death perished. First they beheld there a creature more wondrous. They also see the dragon, the worm on the field, in front of them lying, the foeman before them, the fire-spewing dragon, ghostly and grisly guessed in his terrors, was scorched in the fire. As he lay there he measured 50 of feet, came forth in the night time to rejoice in the air, thereafter departing to visit his den. He in death was then fastened, he would joy in no other earth-hollowed caverns. There stood round about him beakers and vessels, dishes were lying, and dear-valued weapons, with iron rust eaten, as in earth's mighty bosom, 1,000 of winters, there they had rested. The hoard was under a magic spell. That mighty bequest then with magic was guarded, gold of the ancients, that earlman not any the ring-hall could touch, save ruling God only, sooth king of victories gave whom he wished to. God alone could have access to it. He is earth folk's protector, to open the treasure, e'en to such among mortals as seemed to him proper. Chapter 42. Wiglaf's sad story. The hoard carried off. Then 'twas seen that the journey prospered him little who wrongly within had the ornaments hidden down neath the wall. The warden erst slaughtered some few of the folk troop. The feud then thereafter was hotly avenged. 'Tis a wonder where, when the strength-famous trooper has attained to the end of life days allotted, then no longer the man may remain with his kinsman, where mead cups are flowing. So to Beowulf happened when the ward of the barrow assaults he sought for, himself had no knowledge how his leaving this life was likely to happen. So to Doomsday, famous folk leaders down did call it with curses, who accomplished it there, that the man should be ever of ill deeds convicted, confined in foul places, fastened in hell bonds, punished with plagues, who this place should e'er ravage. He cared not for gold, rather the wielder's favour preferred he first to get sight of. Wiglaf addresses his comrades. Wiglaf discoursed then, Wehstan his son. Oft many an earlman on one man's account must sorrow endure. As to us it hath happened, the liege lord beloved, we could little prevail on, kingdom's keeper, counsel to follow, not to go to the guardian of the gold hoard, but let him lie where he long was, live in his dwelling till the end of the world. Met we a destiny hard to endure. The hoard has been looked at, been gained very grimly, too grievous, the fate that the prince of the people pricked to come thither. I was therein, and all of it looked at, the building's equipments, since access was given me, not kindly at all entrance permitted. He tells them of Beowulf's last moments. Within, under earth wall, hastily seized I, and held in my hands a huge weighing burden of hoard treasures costly. Hither outbear them to my liege lord beloved. Life was yet in him, and consciousness also. The old one discoursed then, much and mournfully, commanded to greet you. Beowulf's dying request bade that, remembering the deeds of your friend lord, ye build on the fire-hill of corpses a lofty burial barrow, broad and far famous, as mid-world-dwelling warriors he was widely most honoured, while he revelled in riches. Let us rouse us, and hasten again to see and seek for the treasure the wonder-neath wall. The way I will show you, that close ye may look at ring-gems sufficient, and gold in abundance. Let the bier with promptness fully be fashioned, when forth we shall come, and lift we our lord then where long he shall tarry, well-beloved warrior, neath the wielder's protection. Wiglaf charges them to build a funeral pyre. Then the son of Wehstan bade orders be given, moved valiant man, to many of heroes, holders of homesteads, that they hither from far, leaders of liegemen, should look for the good one with wood for his pyre. The flame shall now swallow, the wan fire shall wax, the warrior's leader, who the rain of the iron often abided, when sturdily hurled, the storm of the arrows leapt to her linden wall, the lance rendered service, furnished with feathers, followed the arrow. Now the wise, mooded son of Wechstan did summon the best of the braves from the band of the ruler. He takes 7 thanes and enters the den. 7 together, 'neath the enemy's roof he went with the 7. One of the heroes, who fared at the front, a fire-blazing torchlight bare in his hand. No lot then decided who that hoard should havoc when hero earls saw it, lying in the cavern uncared for entirely, rusting to ruin. They rued then but little that they hastily hence hauled out the treasure. They pushed the dragon over the wall. The dear-valued jewels, the dragon eke pushed they, the worm o'er the hill, let the wave currents take him. The waters enwind the ward of the treasures. The hoard is laid on a wain. There, golden gold on a wain was uploaded, a mass unmeasured. The men leader off then, the hero hoary, to Wales Ness was carried. Chapter 43. The Burning of Beowulf. Beowulf's pyre. The folk of the Geat men got him then ready, a pile on the earth strong for the burning, behung with helmets, hero knights' targets, and bright shining burnies, as he begged they should have them. Then wailing war heroes, their world-famous chieftain, their liege lord beloved, laid in the middle, the funeral flame. Soldiers began then to make on the barrow, the largest of dead fires, dark o'er the vapour, the smoke cloud ascended, the sad roaring fire. Mingled with weeping, the wind war subsided, till the building of bone it had broken to pieces, hot in the heart. Heavy in spirit, they, mood sad, lamented the men leader's ruin, and mournful measures the much grieving widow. The waders carry out their lord's last request. The men of the waders made accordingly a hill on the height, high and extensive, of sea-going sailors, to be seen from a distance, and the brave ones beacon built where the fire was in 10 days' space, with a wall surrounded it, as wisest of world folk could most worthily plan it. They placed in the barrow rings and jewels. Rings and gems are laid out in the barrow. All such ornaments as erst in the treasure war-mooded men had won in possession. The earnings of earlmen to earth they entrusted, the gold to the dust, where yet it remaineth as useless to mortals as in foregoing eras. Round the dead mound rode the doughty in battle, bairns of all 12 of the chiefs of the people. They mourn for their lord, and sing his praises. More would they mourn, lament for their ruler, speak in measure, mention him with pleasure, weighed his worth and his warlike achievements, mightily commended, as 'tis meet one praise his liege lord in words, and love him in spirit, when forth from his body he fares to destruction. So lamented mourning the men of the Geats, fond loving vassals, the fall of their lord, an ideal king. Said he was kindest of kings under heaven, gentlest of men, most winning of manner, friendliest of folk troops, and fondest of honour. Beowulf, an Anglo-Saxon epic poem by the Beowulf poet, read by Mark Young. Addenda. Several discrepancies and other oversights have been noticed in the Hain-Socking glossary. Of these, a good part were avoided by Harrison and Sharp, the American editors of Beowulf, in their last edition, 1888. The rest will, I hope, be noticed in their 4th edition. As, however, this book may fall into the hands of some who have no copy of the American edition, it seems best to notice all the principal oversights of the German editors. See text for details. Beowulf, an Anglo-Saxon epic poem by the Beowulf poet, read by Mark Young.